Welcome to Doctor on Call with your host, DocGriffon. The doctor will be with you momentarily. Our guest this evening is commercial voice actor Steve Taylor. Please be aware that the host and those associated with Doctor on Call are not responsible for lost or stolen articles during the show. Mind your own shit. Doc Griffin, paging Doc Griffin, you're needed in the OR. Stat!
And thank you, Nurse Wicked. And welcome, everybody. Guess what? We're not on time again, and I think that's going to become part of our Doctor on Call. I do appreciate everybody hanging out and waiting for us to get the technical difficulties fixed. Now, this is a third time's the charm deal. We have tried to interview our current guest more than once, more than twice, and both times it's been my fault, either through hospitalization or tornado power outage. But we've got the third time, and we do have, like I mentioned in the description, a voice as smooth as 20-year-old Scotch, and someone that I love to listen to when he does his narrations. He's also now known as the voice of CourtTV, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Let's go ahead and introduce Mr. Steve Taylor. And how are you this evening?
Doc, I'm great. Thank you, man.
Doc, I'm great. Thank you, man. I'm so happy to be on with you. We've known each other for, 3 years, I think, and I've interviewed you before, and I've never been, asked anything by you other than, would you mind reading this for me? And that's, it's a great thing. I love that. You know how incredibly awesome it is to be sitting here on a Tuesday night. I don't have tornadoes surrounding me like I did last week. And you yourself have had things going on, man. I'm just happy to be in here tonight.
Well, and we certainly do appreciate that. Now, I'll be honest with you. Without getting too much into detail, one of the things where we first met up, there was something involved with another website. But I was so utterly thrilled when you did that one story that I had written that's out there somewhere in the ether. And I couldn't have been more pleased.
Dude, and I mean, this sounds incredibly selfish because it is selfish, but I thought you wrote that part for me because, and that's just a matter of fit. It's kind of like I read it and I'm like, I get this. I get what he's going for here, and what a good character.
And it's funny because there have been a couple of other people that have actually redone it or did it for their channels. They don't even come close.
Yeah. Well, that's very gracious. I appreciate that. I haven't heard anybody else's effort on that, but I've been listening to podcasts of that genre now for about 3 or 4 years, 3 or 4 days a week. So I hear all kinds of stuff, and I'm always fascinated. And you get inspired by it after a while. Voice actors listen to other voice actors, and most of the time we're not egotistical about it. We're analytical about it. We're more interested in what can I learn from listening to this, and so that's kind of how that's what's been very cool for me. But I'll look that up. You've given me something to put on my list to do, by the way. So I'm going to go seek out some other versions of our effort together.
I think one of them got struck, but I know the other ones still exist. The guy's not bad. You can tell that he didn't listen to your version.
Good.
But yeah, I'm not going to say sorely lax. I will just say that it has been done better.
Well, you're very gracious, and I appreciate it very
much. Well, truth is truth. And I do want to, I mean, we'll definitely get into the voice thing because that's the meat of the meal for you. But
that's what I do.
But now, if I remember correctly, you grew up down south.
Yes.
Yes. I was born and raised in, I was actually born in Little Rock, Arkansas. I was adopted in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, and raised in Crosset, Arkansas. I think my parents, I landed on them when I was about a month old. And Southeast Arkansas is, it's not quite the Mississippi River Delta. There's the Ouachita River on the west side of the town. You got Mississippi River, half an hour, 45 minutes to the east. It's Georgia Pacific Mill. That's, I grew up in a mill town. And my parents were from a town about an hour to the west from there. And when I was in my I wasn't even a teen yet. I was 12. We moved to their hometown in Magnolia, Arkansas. And that's where I spent the rest of my youth.
Now, did you grow up in a nuclear family? Did you have other siblings?
No. See, I'm only going to tell you the story. All right. So for this instance of the story, I grew up a single child. I was just alone. I was the only child. I was very happy with that. My parents, I wouldn't say they spoiled me. My parents educated me is a more accurate way of saying what my parents did for me. And they were wonderful at it. My mother, she was such a nurturer that when I got into first grade, she started as an employee of the same school district at the same school as a resource assistant, to a teacher's assistant, right? And she worked in the office, and so she was at school every day while I was at school. And she was doing this so she could find out whether or not she wanted to be a teacher or not. She was spending time observing, and she ended up observing some of the classes I was in, which was weird. And then everybody knew who my mother was, because this was a small town. You knew everybody. And why is your mom sitting in the back of the classroom there? Well, she's, I don't know. Why don't you ask her? And one of the kids took me literally and went back and asked her. And she said, I'm observing this class because I'm trying to determine if I'd like to become a teacher. And, ooh, boy, that started a conversation. And my mother enrolled in college. She was 37 or 8 years old at the time. And she graduated in 3 years with her teaching certificate, a bachelor's degree in education, and began teaching in Waldo, Arkansas, which is 10 miles north of Magnolia, Arkansas. And the rest, as they say, is history. She began as a kindergarten first grade teacher. She then became a 9th grade teacher, and the last 3 years she taught before she passed away. She was teaching senior honors English, which is what her ultimate goal was, to teach in at least, public school. And so she got to do what she wanted to do. I think that's pretty damn awesome for a woman that was in her mid-30s that said, screw it, I'm going to go back to college and I'm going to become a teacher now. And she did. So, you're never too old, I don't guess, but that's one of those things that kind of keeps me at my age. I'm 48 now. It's kind of like, well, Mom she hit her prime well before. And I'm like, man, I haven't hit my prime yet. I'm going, where is it? Am I going to live to see my prime? I hope the heck I do. Because Mom did, and she met her goals. And I've got goals that are quite lofty at this point. As you can imagine, in the ego-driven world of entertainment, which is the world that we operate in, most voice people do in some way or another. It's somewhat egocentric. And being raised in southern Arkansas and being kind of tempered by a small home environment, I think it's made me a better person. It made me first trepidatious about the big old world, and then I got out in some of the big old world, and I fell in love with it. And my parents gave me the ability to see the good in everything. When you grow up in a small mill town across at Arkansas, you had whites, you had blacks, and you had Hispanics. You had people of very few other derivations, so it was very isolated. And I wasn't, it's small town. Hell, y'all grow up and don't know nothing, and that's kind of how you grow up. But when you're a curious person like me, curiosity, it don't kill the cat. It feeds the cat, and that's kind of where I'm still at 48. I'm still fascinated by things, and that's
and it definitely seems like the way that you tell it, that her strength was definitely translatable to your not only maturing life but your adult life.
Yeah, and it took being respectful of that and not being ignorant of it, and I think just because of curiosity, and then you had curiosity on the time. I mean, as an adult, I'm coming to grips and quite respect the person that I am, but that includes all the bad stuff like the OCD, the ADD, and the yada yada yada, and the blah blah blah, and the and that's how it works. And it sometimes seems like the stack is just irrefutable, but when you balance it and you look at it, my mother was able to just pick up, and she didn't have to stay at home. I was a good enough kid. She could, and I'm thankful I was a good enough kid so she could leave me at home alone long enough for her to get back home. You know what I'm saying? I would get out of school at 3:30. She would get out of school, an hour north of town at the same time, but it would be 5 o'clock before she got home. She trusted me at a younger age to stay at home, and I did. And that putting trust in me. I mean, that as an only kid, the only kids are just known troublemakers to some people, to hear the legends told. I wasn't that kid. I kept my eyes open, my mouth shut, and I tried to absorb everything I could. And my parents gave me that thirst for that sort of knowledge. I learned a lot just by being quiet. That's a good thing to do, I think. I think my kids are starting to understand that.
And how was your dad an influence in your early life?
Oh, God, in ways I can't even speak of, simply because you don't put those thoughts into words. You just love them for the emotion they give you. And I'm not an emotional guy, but that's the outside. On the inside, man, I am a pound cake of emotion. And to think of my dad, who died only about 2 years ago, and he was at a point where the only way to say it is he needed to die. He had been sick long enough, severely enough, to where he's like, dude, yeah, bye. I love you for everything you ever did for me. And, he had Alzheimer's. I can't say it was Alzheimer's. What it was dementia, actually. It was, rapid onset dementia. He was, 83 years old and lived alone for a decade or more after my mother had passed away. And this is a man that did everything with his hands his entire life. He grew up on a farm, and he was the oldest of 7 children. And lived in rural southwest Arkansas, about 2 miles south of U.S. Highway 82, in a little town called Village, but that wasn't the name of where they lived at. They lived halfway between Village and Spotsville. Come on now, it's real places. And but he was a country boy, and so much of my youth, especially my younger youth, I remember being on my grandparents on his side's farm a lot, all summer long, because we weren't in school. We would travel there, and and so I basically grew up on a farm in that regard, at least a Southern America farm, not a working farm like a cattle farm or something like that, but we grew a huge garden and we sold produce, and that's what we had to do to survive. And that's all that they did their entire life, until my dad, after he got out of the Army, and he enlisted in the Army when he was 19. He waited a year and then enlisted and then went. This was post-World War II. He went to Germany, and this was after denazification had taken place. And he went there with the Corps of Engineers and blew up and built bridges. That's what he did. And so he came back with this industrial work ethic and military work ethic. Not to say that he ran his household that way, because he certainly didn't run me that way. He had a firm hand, but man, was he gentle. And that right there, my dad was a simple man. He didn't need much. From the day I was born and 15 years previous until the day that man died, he wrote down in a notebook every penny he ever spent. It is the strangest thing ever, but he accounted literally for everything he ever spent, whether it was a cent, whether it was a dollar bill, whether it was an electronic transaction. He wrote it down, so he was accountable for it. And this is the kind of guy my dad was, and he did that. When he ran or worked in business, or not business, but industrial situations, he was a millwright, and a very accomplished, good millwright. Could work any aspect of the building, from the subfloor structure to the roof. He was brilliant that way. He could have been a machinist in any machinist shop on the planet. He could bend sheet metal and could do it well. He could do the mathematics required to do duct work, which is not exactly just folding pipe. You know, I mean, there's a thing to it. And so he worked on cars. He was the neighborhood shade tree mechanic. We never had less than 4 cars in our driveway. Only 2 were ours. He was the handyman. If somebody in the neighborhood, their washing machine didn't work, rather than calling the Sears guy or the Maytag guy, which the Maytag guy, as you well know, would love to get a call, they would call my pop. And, you know, sure enough, it gets fixed. I don't think he ever failed on a job, and I'm not lying to you. And I'm not trying to glorify him into making it into some big figure or anything like that, but when you talk about how much impact that a man can have on his son, I'm trying to give you a sense of that to me, because it was wondrous in a way. And I was talking to my own son, Walker, this evening. He's 14, I think. I can't lose track. Senility. But he's one of those guys, Walker, you know, different generation. He doesn't know that Dad knows how to do that kind of stuff, but Dad does, because Dad grew up around it. Dad's used it a lot in his life. And my wife's sitting at the table, and she says very specifically to him, she's like, you know, Walker, you need to learn how to do basic wiring. And I'm going over here in my head, God, she's going to teach me how to build a bomb. But, you know, but yeah, and it's one of those things he does not want, does not require, does not want that knowledge. He doesn't want to be the guy that wants to know how to fix things and all that. And the words I said to him in response to that was, well, that's going to really turn off your wife. So he sees it in a slightly different perspective than he did when he first opened his mouth. I hope he understands what I was trying to relate to him. But this is the impact my dad had on me. He was a working man, and that's how I remember him. And he was gentle. He was good, and he taught me the value of honor and patience. Those 2 things right there alone are what so many people lack. They are impatient for everything, including their fast food burger. They are, you know, dissatisfied with everything. And my dad was the antithesis of that. He was like one of those, all right, so picture this, being from the South, a milky, almost golden, silky sky afternoon where it's almost, you look into the light and it's like, man, that looks like everything's floating in just this wonderful bath of milk light, and it's just, everything is soft and it's all wonderful. And that's how I saw my dad in thing. He was that kind of gentle. He was that kind that makes your heart smile. And that's how everybody talks about my dad that knew him, was that he was that way. So I'm not saying anything that hasn't been said, and I'm not glorifying him, but I can certainly agree with that sentiment, because I share it, you know. And I love, this is the first time I've had a chance to really speak about my dad to someone that I don't really know. You know what I'm saying? So I'm a little bit freer to say some things like that. And I mean, but that's not going to be revealing to anybody I know that's hearing us, because they're, that's Dewey.
Well, and I'll be honest with you, there's nothing wrong with looking back on your parents if they're providing a positive experience. You know, kind of like that filter that they used in Star Trek every time they introduced the sexy woman. You know. You got that kind of Vaseline filter, which makes it a kind of a dreamlike quality, and there's nothing wrong with that at all, because if they're providing a positive influence, that's something you put in your heart, especially if you have children and you want to pass along that type of aesthetic value and quality. So when you get up to that point, or when you're no longer with us, hopefully they'll be looking through it with that type of lens or filter.
Yeah, I hope their prism is gentle to me, and because, I mean, it could easily be OCD, ADD, ADHD, yada, yada, yada. It's one of those things where, you know, when I was younger than I am now, and they too were younger at the same time, relative to now, I didn't contain my emotions the way that I do at 48. I wasn't as, you know, I was much less a good barometer for myself. when I was younger, because, you know, I mean, you're irresponsible, not with your own feelings. You're being irresponsible with somebody else's feelings when you're not empathetic to an extent. And so one of my goals, and this was my mom, she could smooth any situation. And that's one of the other little small things about her, is she would get her blood pressure up, but boy, you'd never know it. She'd just walk in the room and just be herself and just be gentle and yada, 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 and everything would be okay. And it's like, man, that's magic. But all it was empathy, because she realized, you know, this person needs to be acknowledged. This person needs to understand that their emotion is met with a little understanding and a little bit of respect, and yeah, it's going to be okay kind of thing. And my mom was really good at that, but the empathetic part didn't work out on the only child. Oh, no. The only child got the hell with everybody else. I don't care what y'all thinking, Gene. And, you know, and for a while, I lived my life that way. And that's... You know, I met a woman that meant enough to me to get out of my own way. And, you know, wifey, my second wife, Susan, she changed my life, man, because she held me to task. And that's saying something.
No,
right
that's
there,
definitely not a bad thing. You always want to have a partner when you go through life. I did want to ask, though, because normally what I ask is, you know, as a kid, what did you want to do? What did you want to be when you grew up? And usually it takes until you get to about your teens, maybe your 20s, where you really want to figure that out. But from my research, and I think we talked about this a little bit behind the scenes. When you were really, really young, in the single digits, you had an experience which profoundly affected your life.
Yeah, a tornado went right through our backyard. I was 6, and we were standing in Crossett, Arkansas, in our little 2-bedroom house on Patton Drive, looking out the back window, and you know, you can hear outside, and you know, thunder and all the rain and winds going on, but it wasn't close enough to, even if it had been stronger than it was. And they didn't rate tornadoes by the Fujita scale at that point. They had just begun doing that, actually. It goes how far back it was. It was 1976. And Theodore Fujita had developed the Fujita scale at that point, but you know, most people weren't using it. The Weather Service hadn't adopted it until maybe the year later, I don't think. But in any case, we had this weak tornado go through the backyard. I wasn't scared, because bad weather didn't scare me. It didn't scare my parents. But what should have scared me is my mother standing there screaming, going, get down, Michael, get down now. And me just standing at the window looking at this tornado, and I'm thinking, this is the most wonderful thing I've ever seen. I never could have imagined that what I saw in a book, only just in passing, because at that time I didn't have a fascination or care for it, that this thing that I had seen a picture of in the book was actually right out there. And my God, it was huge.
What was it on the Fujita scale?
Oh, it was an F1. It had winds it was right under 125 miles an hour. This is what the Weather Service from, at that time, Shreveport had driven over and done in their damage assessment of it. And the reason I know that is because that's what instigated my lifelong love for meteorology and weather. How do I know that those guys came from Shreveport? The chief meteorologist was Ernie Etheridge, who was the meteorologist in charge of the Shreveport Bureau. And I met him when I was 6. 2 years later, I wrote him a letter at his office. And I told him, I said, meeting you and learning about the tornado damage assessment was incredibly meaningful to me. I'm fascinated by weather. I just a big long, 8, almost 9-year-old letter, and I wrote it as direct as possible. And what I got back was one of those, dun dun dun. I got back a box that was bigger than me, and it was actually a crate inside of cardboard. And Ernie Etheridge had sent me the old station meteograph that the Weather Bureau in Shreveport used to use. And I don't know if you know what a recording meteograph is. It records 4 things. It records temperature for a 24-hour period around a cylinder. It's kind of, it looks like a seismograph, but instead of a long stream of paper, you got a tube of paper. with a graph on it, and it's time aligned for 24 hours. It does one revolution in 24 hours, and you got 4 ink heads on it, and one of them's temperature, and it gives you, obviously where the maximum is, you'll see easily on the scale, and then you'll see where the minimum was, and then, the other's barometric pressure, and some of them might have had dew point, others might have had humidity, and the other would have had some sort of wind recording, just so you could see where peaks had taken place. And he gave me that, and he gave me all the sensors that were involved with it, and he gave me he gave me a year of his handwritten notes from the forecast table when he would. As the meteorologist in charge, you may not have actually made the forecast. One of his guys, one of his journeymen may have made the forecast, but he had to sign off on it. And so he had a whole lot of handwritten notes, and what it was just forecast reasoning. They now have what's known as the area forecast discussion, which is a product the Weather Service now issues as something that anybody can look at, and it's the same thing that Ernie Etheridge had sent me. And they decided to do that because of the handwritten notes, all these meteorologists in charge about how to improve forecasting, and a lot of learning took place from that sort of stuff. So that's one of those cool things. Yeah, meteorology, I can't look at the sky and just see clouds and stuff.
I remember, I wish I was as profoundly affected, but I remember watching one of the funnel clouds pass over in 1974 to go destroy Xenia.
God, man, and the Xenia tornado I studied. It was part of the literature I studied at Mississippi State University as part of my bachelor's degree in science there. When I finally did, and see, I've skipped something here. I didn't go to school to be a meteorologist until I had hit my 30s, and did it like my mom did it. Thank you.
Following in mom's shoes.
Actually, I was a musician before that. Well, yeah, but I was a musician before that. That's a whole other story. We hadn't got me old enough to tell you that part yet.
Xenia was an F5.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. That at the time it happened was probably the strongest tornado in recorded history in the United States, possibly North America. And there have been few since that can rival the power and intensity of that particular tornado. It was a strong one. It was not part of the super outbreak, was it?
Yes, it
was.
Yeah, it was, because there was, I think in 24 hours there was like 150 tornadoes that hit the ground.
April 3rd and April 4th, 1974. Yes, the super outbreak, and ridiculous number of tornadoes. Just as under 200, but man, in one day. And I was seeing what's that guy's name? Jim Cantori on the Weather Channel recently was talking about tornado statistics this year. It's been a very active year this year, and man, I don't chase storms anymore. I did that when I was younger, in my late teens, early 20s. I actually went out and tried to do that.
I'm going to say, because wifey's sitting right next to me, and her eyes just got wide, because that's one of the things, if she could do, she would love to be a chaser.
Man, chasing it's all about what it's honestly about. Why a true, and there's a difference between a storm chaser and a recreational chaser, which is what a lot of people turned into. Because it's easy to grab a video with something and go, post it and make a couple $100,000 off of it, maybe. But chasers that go out and do it, you take Reed Timmer, for instance, and I've met Reed. Reed is a fine man, and has seen some of the worst storms in the United States ever, and is fascinating to talk to, because he's seen storms and storm structure do things that it's like, that's not textbook. That can't happen, but it fascinates me that these guys go and do it, but they're smart enough to go do it and not become a statistic. He didn't die that way. That's because he was smart. There's only one way to chase tornadoes, and that's not get yourself in the way of the damn thing. And if you understand how a storm works, if you understand the forces that guide that storm, and there are many, not just what's going on the ground, and if you understand what that storm can do besides just that tornado and the proximity of you to all that, if you can understand all that, then you can go out and become a successful storm chaser and not a statistic. And that's kind of why I quit when I did. It's like, I've seen what I wanted to see on this thing. I haven't died. I'm going to quit now. So, I think I intercepted 24 tornadoes in my little short, brief chasing career, and retired my ham radios a long time ago.
So what was the biggest storm that you chased?
In Kansas and Nebraska, I think, and you have to include northern parts of Oklahoma and Panhandle, Texas, basically from Amarillo to Kansas City and northward to the southern border of South Dakota, basically, in a weird sort of triangular sort of way. That area right there is the place to chase. And if you go out on a day when your forecast says, yeah, it looks pretty good, we might get a tornado out here, chances are, if you know your stuff, you're going to be close enough to possibly maybe be able to drive over and see one of those things. And that's the ever-loving point of it. And when you get one that you didn't expect, that's when you start writing a diary about it. And the same thing kind of happened to me. I was on a storm chasing trip with a friend. We had gone... we always based out of Amarillo, just because at that time they were incredibly friendly to chasers and allowed them use a part of their facility, not the forecast office, but they gave them data if they asked for it, and they put them in a conference room, let them draw out their own maps, because that's how you forecast this. You actually pencil it in, and it is a process, and you have to understand what you're looking at, and you have to draw it right in the first place. That way, but that means you have to understand the science, so you have to understand how all this stuff works, so you can make a forecast that's not going to bust. And that's what happens. That's why many storm chasers are so bad at it, is because they don't know how to forecast. What they do is they just follow what everybody else is saying. I'm going to be going here. That's how they rely on getting there. And I'm telling you, to be authentic as a chaser, that ain't chasing. That's just following. All right? Chasing a storm means putting yourself in the path of that thing, or in an area that's going to be, you're intercepting is what you're doing. That's a different kind of thing, because you know where that thing's got to be. If you know the storm right, then you can get there without killing yourself, and that's the point of it. But good storm days, man. Getting way off.
No, you're fine
on it. I had two real good ones. One of them, the strongest I witnessed was a strong F3. I don't think they rated it an F4. And I was talking about how large that area was. On the day that I'm thinking about, I had driven to the South Dakota border, trying to get ahead of a line of storms that did not form. And I came back further south and intercepted a line of storms while it was forming, and got far enough south to get far enough ahead of it that I could come back in front of it. And this is like 8:45, 8:50 at night, which once you get out toward the western part of Kansas and Nebraska, it's not dim. There's plenty of light still out there. A farmer can work until 10 o'clock at night out there. So I'm coming up on this storm. All I can see is lightning everywhere from every altitude in front of me. Cloud to ground right in front of me on the base of the storm. Cloud to air lightning and cloud to cloud lightning going on, crawling under this anvil I'm under, approaching the storm from the east, going west. I'm running right into this thing, and I know the road I'm going to take going south, so I don't let it run over me. And I know that's up ahead, and when I get up ahead, this storm, this rotating supercell, had become the most beautiful thing I believe my eyes have ever witnessed, aside from my children. Just the structure of the storm, it turned into this huge barber pole corkscrew, because the whole storm's rotating with its updraft. Is what's taking place, and it's rotating counterclockwise. So it goes up from left to right, and it just keeps going. And up above, you have this huge anvil that's ramming up against the tropopause, which is the boundary between the lower layer of the atmosphere and the stratosphere. And when it hits that, all that can happen is it just explodes in this pool upside down, and it expands all around the storm except for one small part. And that's the cap. It broke. And when that cap broke, this mound of towering cumulus explodes through the top of this storm, and you can see it by the second get bigger and bigger and bigger. And for about 35 to 40 seconds, you get this dome right on top of the storm, and then it disappears. It just drops. And what happens? I'm east I'm east of this storm. It now is just about 10 minutes until 9 p.m. There's sunlight coming from behind it. It's this huge corkscrew. On the right-hand side of the bottom middle of it is where the huge outflow is going to my right, and you get these big curtains of lightning that show up on all that rain, and you can see where there's a hail shaft back there too. And down below, as soon as I'm like, that's called tornado genesis, by the way. That little cloud feature I described, sinking suddenly into the top of the cloud, is usually a good visual indicator. There are a couple of good ones of tornado genesis taking place. And that's what happened. When that when that huge updraft collapsed, that's what happened, and that cloud suddenly just disappeared from the top. Suddenly down below, you get this descending, rotating cloud happening about the same time, and it got and I'm 20 miles away on the flattest part of the plains you can be on. You can see the bottom of the storm and its structure and the tornado emerging from the bottom of it, and it took it about 2 or 3 minutes as just this big dark cloud of rotation going on before a dust cloud began forming, a debris cloud started forming underneath it. And so I watched this tornado genesis from the storm perspective, which not many people get to do. This particular tornado, I saw it before it ever happened and could have told you it was going to drop when it did. And I watched its entire life cycle. I never got to intercept it. I watched its entire life cycle play out right in front of me to a to a tornado that ended up being just shy of 3/4 of a mile wide, and on the enhanced Fujita scale, I think they probably call it an F2. And it stayed on the ground for 8 minutes, and I got to see all 8 minutes of it. And I mean, that to me, that's more impressive than running into one. What's less impressive further still, and the reason that I actually decided I'm not going to go out and do this crap anymore, I had one land on me. It wasn't a real tornado. It was a land spout, which was on the leading edge of a squall line. And it's just these eddy vortices that form out in front of the outflow that's going in front of the squall line. You know, when the big breeze shows up before the rain does. It's one of those kind of things. And this was no minor swirl. It had some power to it. And it's like, okay, that's as close as I want to ever get to being inside some vortex of some sort or another, other than maybe a dust devil. So it was on that trip I gave it up, but that happened. And the actual tornado that landed, I was, I think, probably about half a mile behind it. And I was trying to get away from that storm. It rattled me. And so I got out of there, man. I'll just tell you straight up, it scared the hell out of me. I had to go.
Well, nature is a scary thing. By the way, since we're at the 30-minute mark, guys, we are off because technical difficulties took us about a half hour. But if you do want to get to know Steve a little more after this is done, his official website's down there. Also, he's got his talent reel. There's the Twitter, the Facebook, and of course the Instagram. He's kind of all over the place. So that's not a bad thing. And now, so here it is. I mean, we did jump forward a little bit, but you're in your teens. You're getting ready to graduate from high school. What's your outlook? I mean, what are you thinking about? Because once you graduate, society says that, here's your adulthood. So where were you thinking? Where was your path leading you?
Artistic. Because not long after we moved, and I think I may have alluded earlier to having moved from Crossett, Arkansas to Magnolia when I was about 12. I think we moved on Christmas Eve. There was a tornado that night too, by the way. A whole other story I'll tell you sometime, another one. I've drunk plenty. But now after that, when I was, like I said, in Crossett, it's a very small town. Everybody knew everybody. It was a wholesome upbringing. I never got in trouble. Magnolia, bigger town. It's still a small town, 16,000 people. I think it's down to maybe 11 or 12,000 now. It's shrinking, as are so many towns here in this state. The wicked part, though, is that it opened me up to way different kinds of personalities. It also put me in the comfort of being around all of my cousins and family. So I had a lot more confidence when I moved to Magnolia, because as a new kid, it's like, hell, I can be who I want to. I don't have to worry. These kids don't know me, so it was a good thing. I was interested in band. I joined beginning band the year previous and had stuck with it. Moved in the middle of my 7th grade year, so I moved into the middle of a bunch of musicians that I didn't know, and I was a trombone player and I wasn't particularly good at it, but what I ended up being great at was euphonium and tuba, and so thus began my music career, at least in school. That evolved from also younger interest of the electric bass guitar that one of my uncles had. When I was about 8, he showed it to me. When he was about 10, he actually let me play it. When I was 12 and we moved there, I got to see it all the time, and I developed my own love for music of my own. Instead of listening to my parents' music, I fell in love with Rush, because that was about the time that Grace Under Pressure came out, and the song Distant Early Warning was all over MTV. And that was I knew who Rush was. Nobody had not heard Tom Sawyer at that point, and Exit Stage Left had only been about 2 years previously, the great tour that they had, and all the big stuff that Rush did. And the 80s part at least. And so that was inspiring to me, but I also fell in love with symphonic music. I remember about that time, Star Wars had been out maybe about 6 years. Well, that came out in 76, 77. I'm 12, almost 13 at this point. Raiders of the Lost Ark has come out. And I fell in love with the soundtrack on Raiders. And I thought John Williams was just the most gifted composer I'd ever heard. And to this day, if you ride in the car with me, yes, my thumb drive has the entire soundtrack to Raiders of the Lost Ark on it. I can hum you every note of every instrument in the score. And that's how well I do it. And that's how I dove into music.
And to just be on the trivia side, John Williams is a man who's been nominated the most times through the Academy Awards.
Yes, absolutely. And he should have been every time, should have won every time. I love the guy. I got to meet him many years ago. And he's another one of those gentle souls.
There are many days when I have the Imperial March theme stuck in my head.
Yeah, that one comes on pretty often, actually. Every time I look in the mirror, I hear it. I don't know why.
So I'm guessing that you were in band or orchestra.
Yeah, I was in
Yeah,
band.
I was in band. I learned all the low brass instruments, and because they were fun. I ended up being able to play trombone rather efficiently, but I was much better at euphonium. The size of the mouthpiece, which is similar to most trombones, at least larger bore ones, suited my embouchure nicely. The tuba, though, became a love affair because I could make that thing sing, and I really got into it. I achieved a lot playing a Besson tuba and Yamaha tuba. There were 2 tubas I played when I was in high school and college that were just brilliant, and I loved them. And to this day, I just remember all the fingerings to all the etudes I had to learn, And if I had to sit down and play the instrument, which I haven't picked up a tuba and played it, and when did I graduate college? On that time, that was a long time ago. That was 1992. So I haven't picked up a tuba since then. Euphonium either, but I love euphonium because, dude, that is like tuba on acid, or on adrenaline more, because man, that thing could play fast. And I was impressed by real melodic music, and that had to do with growing up and my parents thinking it was, it's fine if Mike wants to hear Chuck Mangione, call the radio station, they'll play it for him. Is kind of how it was, and I did. I loved Chuck Mangione when I was growing up. Why? The 1980 Olympics. Yeah. All of a sudden, here's this guy playing this fat trumpet, and he's playing Give It All You Got. And oh my God, that melody still sticks with me to this day. That whole CD does. There are a couple of really good songs that came off of that I can still hum you from memory, and that began a love affair with jazz for me, and jazz still to this day is a love affair for me. I just recently acquired a Gibson ES 335 guitar that's going to do double duty work as playing some of the Rush songs that I love so much, and trying to mimic Larry Carlton as much as I can, and some Steely Dan stuff on the rock side. But there's some horn players like John Coltrane I want to transcribe and do some of his stuff from guitar like other people have done, because it's a challenge.
I'll have to,
that began a long time ago.
I'll have to say I was more of a moving pictures fan.
Yeah, I love moving pictures. I was sitting here the other day the song "The Camera Eye" has been one of those that actually, out of this, all the songs on Rush's moving pictures, that's the song that I love more than any of them, including Red Barchetta, which I will say this, and I will refute any evidence you bring me to the contrary. Red Barchetta by Rush is by far the most well-conceived, most well-written, most well-arranged, most well-performed piece of rock music ever. Nothing comes close. And if you wish to challenge me on that, you can. But man, I'm 48. I've saved up some coinage over here at this level. So y'all gonna have to come with the hard stuff.
Well, and one of the amazing things, and I know most of my audience is usually 20s or 30s. Back in the day, you really had to make an impact. And I think, what was it? There's only like 7 or 8 songs on that actual album.
Yeah, there's 7 songs on that one, and one's an instrumental, and it's a great one. And it lost out for what is the music award, the Grammys, isn't it? In the Grammy Awards, it missed the Grammy. I don't think it was that year. They lost to Cliffs of Dover by Eric Johnson for one of their instrumentals, which, I mean, it's a great guy to lose to, but holy crap. YYZ, which is actually how it's said, is just this great 4 minutes of fury that and when Neil Peart describes it, and he does, I wanted to bring the frenetic activity of an airport to mind with this song, and boy, they sure did pull that off. It's a brilliance.
Now here's the thing that kind of disturbed me about Rush. I saw them in concert, and they were letter perfect. And that's what kind of freaked me out because,
very mathematical, isn't it? It's quite rigid. In fact, I think some people might have said, "When did you see them?" I'm curious.
I saw them when they did the 2112 tour.
Holy crap, 76. So you caught them, and this is man, you caught them at a time when those 3 guys were at the peak of their technical abilities, as far as being on, if doing all those random time signatures and being able to do it fluidly and not go running all over the place. They had yet at this point, when you had seen them on tour, to release hemispheres and permanent waves and moving pictures, all the great stuff that they did, and all the great prog rock of Hemispheres, which to this day is still the best progressive rock album of all time, I think. But you caught them, man, when those guys were they were woodshedding, and they were so damn good. I mean, that album, 2112, is one of those albums, man. It is truly Rush's breakthrough, and I have great appreciation for it. I could go on.
Well, I was pretty young at that point, but and it's funny too because my first concert was Journey, and this was leaps and bounds incredibly different.
Yeah, and I can say that the first time I saw Rush live, I cannot recall any of it. I don't have a memory of it anymore. And I think that's just because I was so kind of overwhelmed by the whole thing. They weren't my first rock concert, but they were the loudest one at that point I had gone to. And these are guys, they're my heroes. At the time when I finally got to go see them the first time, I had already gone through 2 albums. I think I finally saw them on Hold Your Fire, which was 1987. And so I saw him in November of that year in Shreveport, Louisiana, at the Hirsch Memorial Coliseum with my friend Alan Norman from Crossett, Arkansas. I'm still friends with that guy to this day. And we went and saw them on the Hold Your Fire tour, and that was the first time I had seen them. And man, it sucked me in because this was my senior year. And I just started following them. 2 nights later, they were in Little Rock, went and saw them. 2 nights later, they were in Memphis, went and saw them. 2 nights later, they were in Lexington, Kentucky, went and saw them. And it began an obsession. And it was also the time I was really woodshedding on bass guitar a lot and had been influenced by a lot of other musicians like King Crimson and those guys, and Tony Levin just being such an incredible bass player anyway. And other musicians like Jaco Pastorius, the bassist from Weather Report, who had died, I guess, 4 or 5 years prior to that. I think he died in 87. or 86, I forget which, may have been earlier than that. But I remember after he died, some guys were like, "Man, you said Jocko passed away?" I'm like, "Yeah." I mean, because Jocko was one of those musicians, you can't talk about him and not kind of shake your head a little bit. And he's one of those kind of guys. But Rush was obviously the biggest musical influence on me as a stringed instrument player.
I'll be honest with you. My brother used to drag me to concerts all the time, and I had to go back when Rush came in. Oh God, what was it? It was mid '80s. I think it was the Grace Under Pressure tour.
Right, that was 83.
And because I had to go back to see if what I had heard and what I remembered was textbook.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things as a young musician, when you hear them with that mystical ability of being able to pull off that riff with perfection, but not just that one guy, all three of them at the same time. And they do it again and again and again and again. You cannot be anything but inspired and awed by that. And that's why a lot of 80s metal that I like to listen to now, like Dokken and groups like that, I kind of, you know how in youth you look down on that crap. That's bullshit. I'm not listening to that. But as I've gotten older, man, groups like the Moody Blues have become real important to me, and I have not missed their music. I missed it when it came out, but I don't miss it now because I hear it all and I love it all. It's like all of Steely Dan's catalog, man. I listen to Steely Dan on repeat from now to the day I pass away.
I think you need to stop this line because my wife is now thinking about dating you.
No dating the voice guy. My wife won't share me. I'm sorry. She's very proprietary.
That's not a bad
when it comes to me. No, I love it. My wife is the most secure thing I've ever had. She is my joy.
So,
absolutely.
How did your love of music transfer? Because I know you wear several hats, but how did that transfer into your voice career?
So when I was 15 and we moved to Magnolia, I guess 2.5, 3 years previous to that, the local radio station, there were two. That's how small my little hometown of Magnolia was. The hometown station was KVMA, AM and FM. And my grandparents on my dad's side out in the country listened to that radio station from the time it signed on to the time it signed off at sundown every day. That's how they got their news and information, And so a radio was part of my life. When I was very young, I remember 5, 6 years old to that, listening to Chicago White Sox games on WLS and listening to the Cubs on WGN and hearing all these great announcers like Harry Carey and Milo Hamilton is still my favorite baseball game caller of all time, and Jack Buck or Joe, and that made a difference. It made me understand what a guy should sound like when he's describing something.
Well,
this is what radio
Buck didn't get his due.
No, he never got his due, never will get his due, but he was important. And he was so important, in fact, that you cannot identify the St. Louis Cardinals without mentioning his name.
I cannot disagree. Because
and I followed baseball as a kid. I played baseball as a kid. Baseball was very important to me when I was younger. It is not anymore in the same manner, but it's one of the few places I'll allow myself.
Oh, I listen. Like my grandfather taught me this, that if you're watching, because of course I grew up in Ohio, so the Reds were the team.
Yeah.
And
that's right.
My grandfather would take and turn off the volume on the television, set the radio on top of the TV so we could listen to Marty Brenneman and Joe Nuxall.
And the people that miss those great broadcasters like that, especially as it relates to baseball, man, that's a shame, because a lot of people want to identify baseball's golden era by the players. I can agree with that only to an extent, because to me it was the storytellers that made it worth listening to. And I still feel that way. I still am very romantic about radio and its power, and the power of speaking, and the power of just the voice. And I mean, how many videos are on YouTube now with ASMR or AMSR, whatever the hell it is, that all it is about speaking, even softly.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to narrate, but it's another thing to immerse. Right. And I think you can correct me if you think this is incorrect, but radio gave spirit and body to the imagination because you physically could not see it. So your mind starts creating those images.
Yes, absolutely agree. 100% agree. Case in point, War of the Worlds changed everything. You know, why did it change everything? It changed the way that people really finally saw what entertainment could do. It could do that. They didn't understand the emotional power of it until War of the Worlds was broadcast. That's when everything changed about the gripping power of it. You know, and then after Wells went on, because everybody after that point was one of these announcers. We're going to get this right here on this dollar dime, and we're not going to deviate from it. We're going to speak properly, and we're going to use English every time we open this microphone. They were very direct and very stoic, you know. And then after that, some of the pre-World War II announcers like Lowell Thomas gained his biggest fame in covering World War II because he was the voice of Movie Tone News. And that's where the movie reels, that's where, you know, you got all your information, was the movies back then. You know, the guys and gals that stayed back home, that's how they got their news.
Marching on to the sands of Normandy.
See it. See, and Lowell Thomas was that guy, and I knew his name because the instant I heard his voice on the screen, boom, you know, here's Movie Tone News, read as reported by Lowell Thomas, and he was that guy. And so I've done a couple of versions of War of the Worlds over time, and the most recent one I did involved this New Jersey announcer. He's in Bayonne, and he carries the last part of the first act in War of the Worlds. He carries it for several minutes. He's the only announcer on there. And I found when I was trying to record that it was so hard to stay in that character the same way, you know, over that course of minutes, because I'm one of these kind of guys that when I sit down and actually record things, I'll if it's radio imaging copy, like, which is the majority of what I read for radio stations, coming up this Saturday, it's the biggest sale of the weekend, that kind of stuff, that's one thing. But doing this kind of stuff, no, it's different. You really want to stop and nurture it. And speaking of the little project you and I were involved, that's how we got to know each other. That particular guy was equally as difficult. It took me a couple of days to record that script. And sometimes that's the case, because sometimes it's just difficult to when I'm not that guy. Because, see, I'm from the South. You've heard me talk with my non-regional diction this entire evening for the most part, except where I'm affecting somebody else's voice. But how do I really talk? This is how I really talk, right here. This is it. This is the real accent. This is how I talk. I grew up close enough to Oklahoma and Texas to get a little bit of that on me. And I've lived near and in proximity to Louisiana to be able to feel that too. And so if I get far enough south, a little bit of that Mississippi starts slipping in there. And this is how I talk. It's just, it is. So I don't talk this way to people, because they're like, man, you are a dumbass. How could you breathe on your own? You know, it's what I get from people sometimes. And if I really want to throw somebody off, I'll go. And I did this when I was in Los Angeles recently with some of my VO friends at one of the conferences that I went to. You get in a group of these people and they're used to hearing your voice, you know, and we're the type of people, we key on voices, and I mean, so we rely on them. They got to be there. And so if you're having a conversation with somebody and then you don't talk in this conversation for a couple of minutes, and then I actually had left the table and I kind of walked over there and I just started talking over behind them, kind of like this. I wasn't talking to nobody. I wasn't saying anything but gibberish, kind of like I'm doing right now. And it stopped that entire restaurant. And that is power. That is powerful right there. So every now and again, I'll whip it out on some of my Canuck friends. I'm the voice of Flow 93.5 in Toronto, which is an urban station, and it's wicked to be on where some of my friends that work for other companies like Chum FM and places like that, which are great, another great radio station. Those guys are used to hearing me this way, right? And every now and again, I'll send them a take or two, the whole thing just read in that atrocious Southern accent that I have. And I'll tell you who freaks out when I do that is my Australian stuff. I'm on a Kiss FM in Sydney, which is the biggest contemporary hit radio station in Australia. They're home of Kyle and Jackie O, and they're a big deal. But those guys, good day, Steve. We'd like for you to read this for us today. You just give it a little bit of your, you want to be happy, okay? You don't want to be too dramatic on it. And so they'll be that way about it. And I'll start reading it, and I'm thinking in my head, what I really ought to do? What I really ought to do is do this in Southern. And so I did. I did the entire script that way. And I got back an audio file of 39 people in the studio laughing at it, going, "It's the funniest thing they'd ever heard." And so I'm like, yes, connect. I love that sort of stuff right there. But, that's the only time I pull it out. Those guys, and my Canuck friends, they think it's funny because I actually hired a guy to do a Southern accent for me. And I told this story in Nashville this year that I hired a guy from London to do a Southern accent for me. And somebody asked me, why the hell, living in the South, would I hire anybody to do a Southern accent from London? Because trained actors from London that have an accent that tends toward a Cockney kind of accent can do an American Southern accent just as good as Dixie Carter, just as good as anybody you ever met from south of Mason-Dixon line. And I mean, they're good at it. And the reason they're good at it is because their theatrical voice training, it doesn't teach them the accent, but it teaches them the mouth shapes that allow them to do it. That's where Shakespearean theater will get you somewhere. Okay, it will teach you to do things with your voice it was not designed to do, and it'll work for you. So, my old 48-year-old self would, if I could have 5 years back and go take theater, I'd go do that right now. But I'm happy where I'm at.
And if we take a look at it, War of the Worlds was like 80 years ago?
Oh my God, it was so long ago. And a lot of people are going, it's just not relative bullshit. And I say that greatly, and I'll say it to a priest's face too, because that piece of audio right there was the culmination of so much art and technical ability at the time to pull it off the way they did. And then when you're sitting here 75 years later, and we did the last one I did for the 75th anniversary of this thing, when 75 years later, you still want to give it that same sort of, man, those actors were all great at what they did. And they were all right there side by side, and the sound people were all great at what they did. And they were right there side by side. It was a cast right there, and it took all those guys, and it took somebody directing it. And I mean, that's why it was so brilliant. And then you did this on radio, and the whole freaking country gets, they're paying attention to it. More people listen to that broadcast than anybody in anything in history to that point. And why did they do it? Because it created a panic. People almost believed it. People did believe it. People started doing strange things, but Wells did it right. He disclaimed it before, in the middle, and after. It was just brilliant storytelling, and it was so good that people believed it. And that's why reality TV doesn't hold a candle to anything for me, because it is not storytelling. It's just, vapid, emotional shit is what reality television is. Although I am the voice of a television network. That's completely real. That is just nothing but reality. But, and CourtTV is that. And I'm glad they're back to being their own network. I'm astounded that they are. I'm further astounded I'm the voice of their network. And why the hell are you guys choosing me? But I'm so happy to be a part of those guys. And they're as real as it gets. Those guys, those people are on trial. They got this one that they, I don't know if they went mistrial on it, but he's going to go back to trial later this year. You got Harvey Weinstein. That trial's coming up. And don't tell me that, people that look at the entertainment industry and go, that guy was a pure schlob, aren't interested in what's going to happen to him and what's going to come out of that courtroom. You damn right they are. So it's time for Court TV. Y'all need to sign up for that stuff. Your cable operator.
Well, and let me dovetail this into it. Do you think that with the decline of radio, that future generations have seen a decline in their imagination? Because literally, what the future generations, the one that are past mine, they get their fantasy and their creativity already fed to them by video games or television or movies.
Well, I agree with you completely, and I think to an extent for maybe a couple of years, and I'm talking about this in terms of all three of my current teenage children. They are 16, 14, and 13. Move that 3 years back to where they start at 10 and end at 14 or 13. At that point, I can definitely say that they ate whatever they saw. You know what I mean? And how the YouTube algorithm at that time was really starting. It picked up on every proclivity you had, and it would feed that to your stream. So you literally, just by scrolling, had hours of entertainment. And my kids started doing that for a while. But my kids also at the same time started seeing things that intrigued them, and they started asking questions. And rather than just going, go ask your mother, I started answering some of their questions. And they all three have... I don't want to take any credit for it at all. I just nudged them in the right direction, and that was necessary to be a correction to what could have been, years and years and years glued to a screen and not getting any sort of enrichment whatsoever from family or environment or whatever. So I encouraged my kids to get up, and so my son, who has a long story, has got some issues with his eyesight. He is a creature designer and cuts out his own models of these creatures, just like any creature modeler would do. He doesn't have clay, he's got cardboard, so he makes it work. And this is impressive to me, because these aren't creatures he's seen in somebody else's story. These aren't ones he's seen somebody else draw. I know every damn one of them, and there are over 300 of these things now, are all completely original. And it came out of my son's brain. So when he starts doing his video game design, which he's learning how to code now, he can make his creatures the way he wants them, and he knows how they work. He knows the mechanics of them. He knows how the 3D aspect of building them works, and how you have to have a skeleton, and everything moves over the skeleton, and yada yada yada. He understands how gravity works. I mean, this is my 14-year-old son. I'm proud of him. He did not just sit and accept what he saw. Neither did either of my daughters. Grace, who's 16, I swear she'll be president just because she says so. She has that sort of will and drive and determination. She wanted to learn how to do character art, much like manga. And she sat down and she used YouTube to her advantage. She found a reputable artist and did not have to pay for it. And she got these great lessons on how to do basic elemental setup for some of the art she wanted to do. And she's so good now, she could draw any of the stuff that she wants to. It's not human realistic, but it's perfect for the cartoon and entertainment world. And my youngest daughter, Lola, same way. I got her a digital art tablet, much like I had done Grace, and she has her own, she's developed her own characters. So she's a hybrid, actually, what Gracie does and what Walker does, character design and development, and then she writes stories too. So all my kids are these great creative types that have technical ability to go along with it. And so I'm a proud dad. They are of that generation, and I am of the type of parent that very easily could have let that slide off into they'd still be sitting in the same place. But nah.
Well, there's no better job than dad.
Yeah, it's hard not to love.
Now, of course, since we're at the top, I'm doing this so when the pre-record comes up
backwards,
they'll know. if you take a look down in the descriptors, you will see all of Steve's links. That includes the official website, his talent reel, his Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Of course, my stuff's down there too. If you like what I do, feel free to support me or follow me on Twitter to figure out who's coming up next. I do also have down there the second most important thing, which is the prescription for additional entertainment. These are people that I watch on the YouTube, and people that...
Thanks for the recommendation, by the way. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I love some of the stuff.
Yeah, it's... I mean, they don't have a lot of followers. They don't have a lot of subs, but that's really not the reason why they're there in the first place. They're just trying to be creative and make some of that content. And in that train of thought, do you think, and because I know you've been involved with several audio adaptations and narrations, do you think that YouTube can be or currently is the new radio?
No. And the availability of product, of course, is certainly there. I mean, you can find video for anything, literally. I'll give you, for instance, I mentioned Crossett, Arkansas. One of the Georgia Pacific there, I mentioned, they had their own railroad, and it was, it was part of the Ashley, Drew, and Northern Rail System, which was Ashley County, Drew County, Southeast Arkansas, and counties north of there all the way up to Memphis. The point being, I found somebody that had done a O-scale and an HO scale rail car from there as livery, as the Ashley, Drew, and Northern, out on a box car. And so I had to have those, and saying you could literally find anything. Look up the Crossett Light, Crossett, and add light on there. And you'll get this reference to an obscure little thing that happens in Ashley County, and I'll just leave it at that. It's one of those creepy things, and so it falls kind of in line with the talking of doing some of the horror stuff I've done.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Incredibly interesting. Yes. Now, I've interviewed some major voice talent. Kyle Hebert, Gavin Hammond, which they made their home in animation dubbing mostly. When you figured out that you had this skill, was there a point where you said, well, okay, here's where the paths diverge. What do I want to use my voice for? And what was your influence to travel down that road?
Do you know that that's one of the collections, one of the first... I got my first cassette player prior to a boombox, and it's the oldest type. You know the type. It's about a foot long, about 6 inches wide, and had the flat top on it, and you had a record button, yada, yada. And so that's how I listened to my music. And some friends of mine and I, about the time I moved to Magnolia, we used it to record something or another, and one of the girls said, God, my name is Michael, is my first name, by the way. God, Michael, your voice got so deep over the summer. And it did. It's like, man, I'm listening to myself going, that's not me. It's not the guy I talked to this morning. It's not him. But it was him. And I heard it, and I'm going, man, I sound like one of those old radio guys. Because the way I was affectating whatever I was saying. So that is all, the affectations have always been there. But I operate, and here's where the actual conflict can be for voice people that do things like, some commercial, a lot of imaging things. You can't be fake. You just can't. You can't be unreal. You can't be disingenuous when you're reading something, because literally people can tell. And if you don't believe me, let me give you two different examples. Tell me. Now I'm going to find some old copy here. I mean, this is something that's already been done, so I can say it and it doesn't hurt anything, and ain't nobody going to get mad. All right, this is from Kiss FM at the end of April out in Sydney, Australia, if it'll pull it off the server. All right, so the deal is, if I've had... Now, here's how I'd normally read it. I'm just going to read the first line. Kyle and Jackie O's door drop is on for Jetstar. All right, So it doesn't really have a lot of attitude, but it doesn't really sound very good because it sounds like I'm faking it, right? For Jetstar. Let me read it this way. Kyle and Jackie O's door drop is on for Jetstar. Now, I read that like I read it. And I read it like I would always read it. That's how I read it. Kyle and Jackie O's door drop is on for Jetstar. All right, so it's not so bad, but I want to give it something different. And it's still real enough, but it's a different delivery. Kyle and Jackie O's door drop is on for Jetstar. All right, so you give it that, and it's enough over the top. You're hearing the raw voice, so yeah, it sounds like, God, man, you're scratchy as hell. When they match all that stuff up with all that sound crap they put in there that I don't know how to do and wish I did because those guys make great money, by the way, then they make it sound really good and big and the big trailer voice kind of thing. Obviously, I have to give them good product, but, it starts with something raw and rudimentary, and sometimes that's what guys in my business face real hard, is trying to make the raw sound real, not harsh, not like it's pain to have to say it. That's what I love doing about some of the storytelling things that I've done, because it, as a voice person, challenges you to be, you don't want to read a character and not believe in that character and what he's saying or what she is doing or what they are trying to convey. You have to really get into it. So for when I've done live reads, for instance, for a couple of horror things, and I know you know one of them, when I've done live reads, they still keep it up on their server because he said it was good enough to do that. But I had not read one of these particular scripts he's referring to. And just in the middle of this live stream that we had on a Halloween night or something like that, I read this story about 15, 60 minutes long. I'd never read before. And as I'm reading, I'm going, man, and this guy's about to lose it. And I just kept escalating my emotions and escalating my pain and escalating my anger and escalating. And that's what you have to do. It's method acting, but it's method acting to the extreme. Why does it have to be to the extreme? Because people can't see you. You're having to convey that with your voice. You can do that real softly, real closely. We can do that real loud from back here. What are you trying to convey? I've got a lot of range right there. Use it. Get good at it. Find what works for you. And especially if you got a character, let's say a private eye. Private eyes are my favorite characters. Why? Because they're all flawed as they can be. They all probably are disreputable to some extent, and certainly with lawbreakers. If they're a dirty cop, even worse so. But Stacy Keach, who gave voice to Mike Hammer, who gave motion to Mike Hammer, that's the voice. That's the one I hear in my head when I hear anybody reading a gangster. Besides Jean-Luc Picard in The Big Goodbye from season 1 of Star Trek The Next Generation.
Yeah, a little Dixon
Hill. Mr. Hill. Yes, and what a great episode that was. But see, that's another bit of storytelling, and it comes back to what voice actors do. So if you're going to do this guy, you got to give him a little bit of an edge. This guy can't sound like he's happy about anything. Why? Because he's really not. He's really fucking pissed. If you want to know what's going on with this guy, he's not happy about nothing. Why? Because his drain smells like somebody took a dump in it. You can't do that. You can't have the guy be normal. He just can't be normal. All right, so you have to that's what I'm saying. You have to, if you're going to make the character stick or translate, you kind of have to take it just a little bit further than what you think you do. And when you do that, that's when you really give yourself over to a part. And that's actually rewarding, because I go back now and listen to some of those. Everything that's in the archive of the horror stuff that I've done, I'm happy with every one of them. I don't think anything has been published that I'm not happy with. But there's a lot of stuff in my personal archive. It's like, holy crap, that's not ever seeing the light of day.
Oh, no. A mutual buddy of ours, Otis Gyrie.
Yes, I love
he actually sent me one that he did of one of my stories, but he messed up and he sent all his outtakes. And oh my God, I laughed all the way through that. That was hilarious. He spent a lot of time berating himself for not being able to hit what he wanted to hit.
Yeah, and you do, because it is a craft, and you have to craft every syllable, every word, every sentence, every line. You have to do that. if you're going to give it justice, especially if you're, lucky enough to be drawing a paycheck from it, if you're really going to be doing it, then you have to give your whole butt to it. You just can't half-ass it. And it's no different than stage acting or on camera acting. It really isn't. And watch some of the extras from some of your favorite movies, especially animated ones, when they talk about the voice acting or the automated dialogue recording or some of that stuff. People that have to do on-screen stuff that do dialogue also are incredibly talented. It is not easy to do, and they make it look that way. And
there's two that I love to watch when they're laying down tracks, and that's Rob Paulson and Mark Hamill.
Gosh, yeah. Yeah, Mark Hamill is exceptionally good. I tell you, what's that guy's name? Oh, my gosh.
And I know Kevin Conroy's been playing Batman for like 30 years, but he seems incredibly subdued when he's doing it. And
you know who's become my favorite out of more recent actors with those peculiar voices like that is Bryan Cranston. And he's on an ad right now. I forget for whom, but you hear his voice on there and the way he was recorded. I mean, he's real up close, kind of like they do Sam Elliott for some Ram commercials, I love hearing actors out of their element doing that stuff, because you could tell he wasn't exactly comfortable with either the studio he was in or the script or something. He was just a little uncomfortable, and he channeled it and used it, and it made that copy just want to make you get up out of your chair and dial that damn number right now and get that car or whatever it was that you're going after. That's the power of this stuff. I love storytelling. I just I say it over and over again, but it's what drives me.
And I'll be honest, I've been trying to get Andrea Romano on the show.
You should.
You should.
She's a unicorn.
I know a couple of them. One of them is this fantastic woman named Jen Sweeney, who is up in Northwest Arkansas, and she does a lot of commercial voiceover. If you watch any television and hear a female voice, you've heard her voice. She's one of those people. And she's great, but she also does theater on the side locally up in Fayetteville, and so she's another one of those great creative people, Doc, that you should probably talk to, because she could relate to exactly what you're talking about.
And I think the world of voiceover, whether it's commercial or it's done through the animation, is incredibly underrated. There's so many people out there.
It's a lot of work.
Getting paid like $10 million to do a movie, and and Dwayne Johnson. I've met Dwayne Johnson's a nice guy. He's an incredibly friendly dude, but I swear to God, he doesn't put in half the effort that the voiceover people do.
Yeah, and that's, I think, man, and there a lot of people in my industry spend a lot of time during the day, every day, trying to enforce a code of rate for what we do, which they're the Global Voice Acting Academy, the GVAA, has what's known as a rate guide, and it's one that has been compiled with information from many years, decades of information, and of making certain that the rate and the formula for its advancement forward is based on not just good mathematics, but is based on good science. And so these folks are trying to do the right thing. That's why a lot of times, rather than really hurt somebody's feelings or piss them off, I'll donate my service, because if they knew what my rate was, they'd never even talk to me again.
I know I couldn't afford you, but...
No, you could. You haven't heard of this guy. It's just how it is. We've known each other.
By the way, did I mention that there's a part 2 coming up for that previous story?
I am interested to hear more about that when you have some details hashed out. That's one I definitely need to know more about.
Otis wants to do it, and I'm like, I love you, but still.
I don't know, if my guy hadn't died off, I'll be glad to, if somewhere in the interim he hasn't died off, I'll be glad to do it, man, because that's a thrill. I love that.
Yeah, now, I know it's basically a pay-for-play thing for you, but Do you have any creative movement when somebody comes to you, or when it comes to commercial, are you like a job's a job?
Kinda. I don't really have anything that prevents me from doing some things. Just me personally, just so there's complete clarity about what I do. I also have a day job besides doing the voiceover stuff, which I work for a group of radio stations. I'm still in radio, a purveyor of production. I'm the guy that is responsible for assurance of the commercial production inventory of everything for all 5 stations. So I have to make sure they're there when they run, and so we make our money like we're supposed to. And that's the day job. It's not complex. It doesn't take all my day. And these are people I've known for 35 years, and they let me do all my freelance. In fact, the president of this company and the general manager, Gary, built this voice booth with the help of his father, who I've known them for 30 years. So we're family. That's what this is. But aside from that, what did you originally ask me? Because I want to make sure I get that. I'm going that direction. But what did you originally ask me?
I got so engrossed in what you were saying that I'll be honest with you, I forgot.
Well,
is it more of a this is to get a paycheck, or do you have creative control where you're like when you come to actual paid gigs?
Okay, so the way it works for me, the majority of the voice work I do, radio imaging is one aspect of that, and that's the voice on the radio. The guy usually at the top of the hour going KISS FM.
Well, and can we stop for just one moment? Do you have the ability to list off all the radio stations that you are the bumper voice for?
Okay, so. One proviso. This counts for 800 stations. I'm the voice of national programming platforms for iHeartMedia. Every year they do the iHeartRadio Music Awards. They also do the iHeartRadio concert.
Do you do the lead-ins for that too?
I do some of it. I don't do the television, but I do all the radio and all the promos for it. So, the iHeartRadio Music Festival this year, featuring 5 seconds of summer.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. I'm that guy. So that's heard on over 700 radio stations by itself. All right. So that's just what that gets me. My other stations are, and I'm going through my folders on my email here. This guy was a producer for, this is Dallas, and I'm not on there anymore. It used to be what are their callers? I don't even remember what their callers were, but they're not on the air anymore out that way. Oh, some of the stations I used to be on. It's KVIL in Dallas. That's who I was trying to think of. A station in Santa Fe, and another station in Dallas I'm not on. But right now I'm currently on KHTH in Santa Rosa, California, KISS FM in Los Angeles, KISS FM in Sydney, KKMG in Colorado Springs, KLTA in Fargo, North Dakota, KQID and KZMZ both in Alexandria, Louisiana. And this is just radio stations. I've got a lot of commercial contacts too. I'm on Y100 in Miami, which is the biggest urban station I'm on. WTUP in Tupelo. I have some stuff on the air on WKTU in New York City, WKQI in Detroit, WJMK, which JMK is, I'm not exactly where those guys are. They're not on the air yet, so I can't really say. WFHN, which is, these guys are in Wilkes-Barre is where they're at. WBMX in Chicago, which is 104.3 Jams, yes, and WBHT in Scranton, PA. I'm also the voice of Rock FM Mania, which is, that's pretty wicked. I'm just going through here to make sure that I do, I do the commercial production for 5 different monster truck tours. Sunday.
That's exactly what was going through my head, because the first time that I ever got paid was the Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. See the monster trucks down at Dayton's Hera Arena.
Yep. I mean, I've done more of those than I can count. Those are a lot of fun. I'm the voice of a lot of the production for the Spanish Broadcasting System, the SBS, on their radio outreach stuff that they do. And it's mostly big dramatic stuff like, talking about Shakira and the big tour and that kind of, stuff. And I don't get to speak Spanish because I can't speak Spanish, but that'd be nice. But they give me some stuff every now and again. I'll phonetically go through and it's like, man, I sound like a bad comedian doing this stuff. It trips me out when I have to do that. But the Romanian guys did the same thing. I'm also on CFXJ in Toronto. That's Flow 93.5. I'm so proud to be on there too because Toronto has the Rush connection. They have the Raptors who just won the championship, and it's on my bucket list to go spend some time there at some point or another. That's what I'm doing these days.
So, do you have any aspirations?
Yeah, I want to be the voice of everything leaving the planet. I'm trying to get in front of Elon Musk.
I was going to get a little more focused and say maybe to because it's been up in the air for about a decade because he passed. Don LaFontaine.
Don was the guy. Obviously, and you can't mention voice work, at least as a male with any kind of deep voice, and not say that Don LaFontaine, affected you because he did. And he was certainly the guy, and I can't affectate that same sort of deliveries as he had. The way he used his throat was phenomenal. He could shape it in ways that would make the air do wonderful things and come out.
Yeah, but can you say that you've never practiced the phrase "in a world"?
I mean, I have to say it all the time because I'm that guy. It's not that I'm the heir or anything like that, but I'm one of those guys, and there are about 30 or 40 of us in the actual business of doing this that actually do that you can call and say, "Can you do the inner world?" Yeah, well, I can do that.
Now, have you had any aspirations to expand into like the dubbing market? Because I know that's pretty lucrative, and the cartoon market.
No, and here's why. I don't want to move to California. And to be honest with you, I know you can do it from anywhere. You can do it in your house. I do it in my house. Right now I do it here at this office. If you really, really, really want to get somewhere in the business, you go to Los Angeles and you park yourself in the middle of that wild and wacky place and you make your living. I'm not doing that. I'm not interested in trying to get into it from home. Why? I don't want to invest into a communication video and all the technology required to do that. I don't want to pay for it. No, I don't want to be that guy. I want to be audio only, and I want to do that from my house. I'm 48. I'm not young, but I am not old yet. I've got plenty more to do, but guess what? I don't want to do that kind of stuff. I don't want to be lame to somebody. I don't want to be stuck on somebody else's schedule in order to make that. I like what I do now, which is basically on demand. When somebody says I need this, boom, I do it. It's real easy. If I need some extra time, like to go to the bathroom, I can do that. Or if I want to put them off till tomorrow, guess what? Every contract says 24 hours. So guess what? If I want to put you off, you get put off. I don't care who you are or what you say your name is. It's one of those kind of things. It is a measure of control. Yeah, it's that damn important to me. Why? Because this is mine. This is nobody else's. This whole thing hinges upon what I think, want, and do. So guess what? I do exactly that. What I think, want, and do. And if that doesn't involve me getting involved in parts of the business spectrum, then that's okay. Because there's other things I do besides just voice work that give me great joy and provide income too. It just happens to be that this is the most recognizable one. I do other things. That's not all I do. And I love being me. If you can't tell, I really like myself.
You have to, or you will never adjust when you get into your adult life, and that kind of transitions into what inspired you. How did you get on to TV to do meteorology?
Okay.
Oh, and I should say, everyone in the chat, if you do have questions for Steve, please feel free. Go ahead, load them now, and we will ask them as they come.
All right. So the way
All right. So the way that worked is after I graduated with a degree in music from Southern Arkansas, I met my first wife. We got married, had kids, got divorced, met my second wife, blah, 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 blah. Where I met my second wife was in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And they had this little television station down there, the name of WDAM.
By the way, she's a total cutie. Your wife.
Oh, my second wife, yes.
Oh, my second wife, yes. Suzanne is she is a stunner. I'm married to a beautiful woman. I married up. There's no question about it. She is absolutely wonderful, and I have beautiful kids, man. I could not ask for anything more wonderful than what I've got in my family. They're the best thing that happened to me. I just the TV thing, you know, I mentioned earlier having just such an affinity for weather, especially severe weather from, you know, young life experiences. But yeah, I mean, and those things stuck with me, and I decided finally, you know, because the news director, here's the crazy part of all this. The woman I met and married, Susan, her mother, Billy, used to date the news director from WDAM television, formerly WDAM. He's with somebody else now, but Randy Swan. And so they knew each other really well. The GM of the television station, Jim Cameron, a personal family friend of my wife's family. I knew these people just in passing. I was working there at a radio station. And as it happens, the TV station had a weekend meteorologist opening, and I went out and applied for it and got it. And that began that. But that's back when I had hair and weighed 240 pounds, I think. I think I got it to 285 at the highest. But yeah, I was a big fat
strapping young man
for a while. Strapping my butt. More than straps. You need something bigger and heavier for that, buddy. I was carrying around a lot and loved myself. Oh God, I was so full of myself. You know, and that's my memory of that time. There's very little joy in doing the television for me. You know, it's not that I didn't enjoy doing it, but there are certain aspects of my life that just were so out of whack at that time. That it's not a happy memory. I'll gladly talk about it, but it's not happy. It's one of those that you kind of go, man, if I could kick you in the nuts memory.
Yeah, but it's a foundational thing. You were able to build off of it.
Oh, for me it is now because I learned from it. Exactly. I'm intelligent. You know, I'm more than just simple protoplasm. I can learn from my mistakes. And when, you know, I was in kind of the middle part of my life there to an extent because I went to work for them when I was, I want to say it was 29 or 30. So, you know, almost 20 years on, looking on it now, it's like, you imbecile. You're just an imbecile for so long. But I haven't wasted any time. You know, my voice has hit a great stride in the last couple of years and has developed a certain amount of maturity that it has not had before. And it's become marketable. I mean, I book auditions. That's a good thing. You know, paying auditions is excellent.
Oh, yeah. It's it's the richness in the voice. That you don't have necessarily when you're in your 20s.
No, you can fake it. Yeah, I mean, and guys do. But, you know, at that point, I don't smoke any less dope today than I did when I was in my 20s.
Yeah, but I'm sure you've had the experience where you come in to just do regular copy on some type of ad, and they're like, can you drop that an octave?
I have been asked to do that, and I do. And usually, you know, if you're intuitive about your guy you're producing with or whatever the rep has told you or whatever, you can kind of go in and go, well, I've got to kind of play this in the middle a little bit. I'm not going to play down here in the bottom quite so much. Instead, I'm going to keep this a little bit more friendly. So it sounds like the guy next door instead of big old guy sitting down there in that van down by the river.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, you see what I'm saying? So it's you have to use it right. And so I guess that's a mark of maturity maybe is that now I kind of try to intuit what my producer's looking for and land in the middle somewhere to give me the ability to go either deeper or not. Well, yeah, because if you hit
them in the middle ground, then if they ask you to flex, you can do it.
And the thing is, I mean, my voice certainly gets deep and everything, but you can't have a conversation with that voice. And so when you say, because it would sound stupid, it's oh gosh, I can't think of the comedian who parodied Don LaFontaine so well. Pablo Francisco. That's who it was. He did an imitation of Don that to this day is still the best that ever happened. In fact, they became friends because of that, as the story goes. But once you get it deep down like that, and and you got nowhere else to go, it also says a lot about the usefulness of that sort of delivery. While it's good for drama and everything, I've started using that real deep thing more for single word punctuation than anything else. Like, the word now, get your tickets this weekend. They're only $17.95. Get them now. It has a different punch to it when you treat it like a radio guy.
Sure.
Treat it,
Yeah, I can completely understand that.
But I hate doing that because that's just that to me sounds so fake. So I try to find if I can hear it in my brain, Doc, I can read it, and if I can hear it in my brain, I can do it, and I'll try to hear what I hear in my head, and I hit that about 95% of the time. Sometimes I don't, and it's atrocious and funny at the same time, but. I'd like to be pretty efficient because, man, if I start losing time or get behind or feel pressure on something, man.
Now, has there ever been any time where you were just like, I can't find this?
It happens about once a month. I'll get an audition. It's like, there's no freaking way I can read this. I'll give you, for instance, today, one of the auditions I got, and I can't tell you the company, was for a place in New Jersey, and they wanted a regional Jersey, Long Island sort of accent, which I can kind of do that. It's not perfect by any means, but I can kind of get there kind of close. But it's a deep voice, right? And so it really, if I can't hear myself reading it in my head, I can't read it. I'm going like, I wouldn't cast me for this. Screw this. And so I had to send back one of those, like, man, I can't get the fit on this, kind of thing. And so it happens. But I don't get upset about it because, look, if I get 1 in 20 auditions, I've done great. That's kind of how.
Well, and the whole part about doing it is being able to give your client the product that they're looking for instead of, kind of wasting their time, because when you get that positive feedback, they will say, yeah, we worked with this guy and he's great. You should check him out.
Yeah. And that's a customer service. Look, I know how I feel when I don't get good customer service from, this, that, or the other. So I've tried to make it a bit of a mantra, as it were, to make certain that I give great service, to my clients. I try to do everything as fast as I can. And I try to do it in as few takes as I can with the smallest amount of garbage on the reel I'm sending. Because, man, normally during the day, I don't do directed sessions. I have the ability to do them, and I certainly don't mind them. And when I do some sessions with certain organizations, they're directed, and they're by phone patch or ISDN or whatever the case may be. But for the most part, I'm independent. You mentioned creative control earlier. That's the only real freedom I have, is to operate within their parameters. I can give them multiple takes in different manners, and I have that ability. I can even throw some new stuff at them if I want to give them a read they didn't ask for, just to be a bonus guy. I'll do that too. But that's really, they're paying for a product, if you want to look at it, not a service. But I'm doing a service. You know what I'm saying? They're wanting something specific. They don't know exactly what it is, and I've got to deliver that. That's what we face, unless they tell you otherwise. I need you to sound like you're vomiting.
I remember the first gig that I got was just 2 words, and it was free Reeboks.
That's 2 great words to say. Free, and I'm wearing Reeboks.
Let me jump into the chat here real quick. Nurse Wicked.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stop you. You do yourself a little bit of public service, or because
I can go. I can go. Show. Go for it.
Okay, great.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
And I won't use the radio voice.
Use it. You should
Okay.
use it anyway.
And if you're looking for additional entertainment from Steve Taylor, please feel free. Down in the descriptor below, you can find his links to his official website, his talent reel, the Twitter, his Facebook, and of course, Instagram. And if you like what we do here on Doctor On Call, or if you enjoy the late night show, the IRS, the Insomnia Rebel Stream, please feel free and follow me on the Twitter. I do also have a Streamlabs if you'd like to contribute. And, of course, we do have a Patreon. And with Patreon, of course, since you're funding my alcohol habit for the month, I don't consider anyone a patron, but I consider you an enabler, and I thank you for that. Of course, we do also have my TeePublic store. And, of course, if you're looking for that fun amount of swag to wear from the Insomnia Ramble Stream or Doctor On Call, you'll find it there. We also support Queensboro Custom Logo Apparel. They are a U.S. company based in North Carolina, and they probably have the greatest customer service that I've seen in the past 15 years. Of course, the second most important thing is my prescription for additional entertainment. These are people that I like to watch. These are people that I like to support. These are the people that I automatically leave a like and a share with. And if you're looking for some entertainment that's kind of outside the realm and not generally known, please feel free. Click on one of those and check it out. There is a lot of great entertainment there, from art to writing to commentary, or just generalized joking around. Please feel free. Check them out. They are well worth your time. And if not, you get your money back. And since this is a free show, there you go.
Be free. That's all I can say.
Yeah, if I ever did any bumpers, I would certainly ask you and Otis.
Man, we'll be glad to do it for you.
Man, we'll be glad to do it for you. I love Otis. He's such a great guy, and I've enjoyed knowing him. We've filled in for each other respectively a couple of different times. So
Yeah, he's a
definitely
sweetheart.
good guy.
And I've kept in contact with him ever since he avoided extradition, and he's doing much better, and I'm glad that he is.
Well, he is.
Well, he is, and I got to. I think we chatted. It was late last week that we chatted. Yeah, because I had to do something that he had to fill in for me for a day, and then yada yada yada. Any case, we had a good time, and he's always a great one to talk to. And man, what a great storyteller that guy is.
Yeah, although I would classify you guys in two different categories.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I don't think either one bleeds into the other. That's why when I basically finished up the part 2 of what I was working on, I was like, I want one of those. And I'm like, I can give you one of those, but I can't give you this one because, when I'm writing, if there's somebody that I want to hear do this, I'll put their voice in my head.
In your head, I do the same thing.
You two are two completely different special breeds.
Yeah, we're quite a bit different. Man, he inspires me though because he's such a fantastic. He's a great weaver. You know what I mean? He weaves.
Well, and here's the thing. He a mutual person that we know contracted me to basically do the fillers between stories that were supposed to be kind of down home. So it was supposed to be like an old man on the Louisiana Bayou. Telling stories, and I wrote them specifically with Otis in mind, and Otis sent me back some of the audio, and it was perfect. It was beautiful, and they just didn't go with it, which happens a lot of times.
Yeah, it does, and that's the thing too. I mean, you put a lot of. It's easy to get your feelings hurt in this business. You know, and you kind of have to have some thick skin. I tell people that. And I tell people this too, because I don't believe anybody can be a voiceover artist as a career or a vocation. I do believe everybody can lend their voice to things. And because not everything is about entertainment and perfection. Sometimes things is about being honest and reaching people. And if my commercial that I just got through written, and as I said, I'm still in radio on a day-to-day basis, then I'll find an amateur or a novice or somebody not even involved in radio and have them read it just to give it authenticity, because we that do this every day have a bad problem being able to stop down long enough to sound real.
Yeah, and
you know,
and it's the whole thing. I mean, even if it's commercial, you still have to feel it.
You do. I mean, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's just the same stuff. You really have to believe what you're doing. And it's not so much about the copy or the concept, because like I said, I'll read anything. There's certain things I stay away from just because of, I won't read political ads. Because I hate every one of them. I don't do things for churches and donate my time that way. I'm sorry, I don't. There are better things that I donate my time to, like my own kids. Who deserve to see me in the absence that they had to suffer through when they were younger.
Understand.
I mean, look, your balance. All this comes back to one thing, Doc, and it comes back to you have to know yourself, and you have to respect yourself, and you have to believe in yourself, and in every aspect. And if you've got doubts, you got to get good at shaking them, or at least put them in the perspective they belong in. You know, great. I can't say words with the L letter in them really well. Just for some reason or another, the way my teeth are shaped and the way my tongue works, I don't say the word L, the letter L in some words very good at all. In fact, it will cause me to not be able to say the rest of the word it's in sometimes, which is a complete defect, and I feel so stupid. But instead, what I'll do, I'll sit there, and that's one of the ones I'll leave my outtakes on. I'll let them hear it takes me 27 times to say that one word right there. I'm glad to let you hear I had to work for that, because that's what I do.
But you're okay with saying Louisiana?
No, I'm not.
No, I'm not. No, Louisiana's not a word. Just like New Orleans
it's
is not
Nolans.
a word or a name of a city. No, it's not Nolans. Oh, God, man, I'm going to educate everybody. I lived there, okay? It's New Orleans. That's how everybody that lives there says it. New Orleans. Say it with me.
See,
New Orleans. Louisiana is just like I said it. Louisiana. It's not Louisiana. It's not Louisiana. It's Louisiana. It's New Orleans, Louisiana. And if you say it any other way, you're not saying it right, but I'm not going to be the guy to stop you. I'll appreciate you for who you are. And just
I had a friend, Taylor Thibodeau.
I love that.
And every time that he talked about Nolans, he always said Nolans. He never said New Orleans.
Now look, you're talking about a coon ass. You ain't talking about no regular American having to say the word New Orleans. You talking about a Cajun. You talking about a Creole fella or something like that who gonna talk like that, Cher. You know what I said? Hey, come on down to Bayou. We gonna cook us up a little bit of chicken right there. You know, I live there. I totally understand it. You know, and those people, oh my gosh, that is like, the heart of America is right there in South Louisiana. And man, people don't even realize that. It's just so much heart and soul of what this country is.
Well,
right
you know, he grew up in Monroe, so he could be a faker.
Monroe. Up there in Willie Robertson's country, man. I lived in Monroe for a while, too. Great town. What was the name? Cormier's on the Bayou. Best crawfish in Monroe I had at the time. I don't know if they're still open.
I tell you, it's funny because I've been a longtime Saints fan. And
oh man,
and you know, shortwave and longwave, I used to pick up WWL because, of course, when they really sucked, nobody would carry them, so I had to listen. Oh yeah, I was a fan of Hoagie Gajan.
Hoagie, man, and he died like 2-3 years ago, and I was so sad about that, man, because Hoagie was the sound of New Orleans right there on the radio.
I cannot disagree. And then when Bobby Hebert came on,
The Cajun cannon, man.
People were just like, "Is this guy retarded?" And it's like, no, he's Cajun. That's the way they talk.
He's Cajun. That's right. You'd think he was slow or something, but hell, he ain't slow. He beat your butt. Don't be fooled by that guy. Not 1 minute. He's still just as tough as he ever was.
Now, I say this because I'm leading into our first question from the chat. Are there any accents or voices that are difficult for you to do?
I don't really do accents. I try to affectate the sound of some occasionally just in conversation, just because, it's a great laughing point for some people. But when I was in college, I was doing some stage plays and things like that. And I didn't take any real formal training, but you do My Fair Lady. I think they offered us training in Cockney and some of the other more proper British and English accents from the British Isles. My grandmother, she was from Ireland, and I heard her talk enough and paid enough attention to her to know how that's supposed to sound. And she cursed at us in Gaelic, which I won't do to you because it would be difficult for you if you didn't understand the Gaelic to know what I was calling you, but it'd be funny as hell inside my head. So a bit of the Irish, and it's a regionalized Irish from County Cork. It's not the Dublin Irish, which it has a slightly different sound to it. And I don't know how to speak the Irish language. I don't know how to speak Gaelic or any of that other sort of stuff. English accent I can't do. It gets corrupted by an Australian accent or New Zealander accent, which is what I'm most familiar hearing of that sort of English because I deal with people in Sydney every day. And I can't do a great one, and they don't appreciate it either when you give them a bad one. Don't give them a bad Australian accent if you're not from Australia, because they will laugh at you. They will call you names like, you dopey bastard. And you see what I'm saying? You don't want to be called that. So I say, good day. Hope you guys are doing well down there. And I'll leave it at that. And I don't even try to do Steve.
Well, it's funny. The last theater production that I did was Secret Garden. And they wanted, basically it was set up, the character description, I did the gardener. And the gardener was a Welshman. And I came in and I just talked like this as a gardener. And they were like, no. So I had to do more like a British accent to do it. I had to Americanize it.
Right, yeah, and that's the problem that most aspiring voice actors don't realize. You can't use the quiet man as an example of Irish, because it's not, okay? It's not. It's Americanized English with an Irish lilt. That's all it is, because every one of them except for Maureen O'Hara had an Irish accent. And hers was Americanized because she had been in America for long enough to try to eliminate that from her speech. So see what I'm talking about, how it goes back a long way, the wrong accents from American voice actors. That's why I don't even try to do them for people. Every now and again I'll try to do the Indian one, which because it's one of my favorite accents ever, not from even a comedic standpoint. I just love how it's melodic. Indian speech, truly Afghani speech is the same way. It's incredibly melodic. And listening to people that are native Japanese, speak Japanese, is like listening to if silk could be made into music. That's what Japanese
I really do love the Indian accent.
I like the Indian one. It's not, I don't do a great one, but it's not very difficult to do. I mean, if I want to really piss off my wife, I'll go into this accent. She cannot stand it. She's on the phone with someone that she doesn't want to be on the phone with, but she's on the phone with them. You know what I'm saying? And so, I mean, I used to do that to entertain myself, but I have OCD and ADD. That didn't last long.
But those who love you will tell you instantly to shut up and stop doing accents.
My wife tells me to shut up with my Irish accent and my Indian accent, so I guess I suck at both of them to her.
Nurse Wicked asks, if there was one character or voice that you could do on a long-term basis, what would you choose?
The voice of Thanos.
Oh, I have to request then.
I auditioned for that a long time ago. long time ago. I mean, you wouldn't believe how long ago it was, actually, if you stop and think about it, how long the Marvel movies have been coming out and how long Thanos has been a single scene, like a cut scene at the end of the movie. His relationship with Josh Brolin and the Marvel universe goes back many years. Thanos would have been the character.
So I have to know. Give me your best. I am inevitable.
I am inevitable.
That's pretty damn good.
Well, I mean, that's not me being mad.
Well, I mean, that's not me being mad. Now, if I'm mad and pumped up and got my glove on and, all my usual Thanos hood attire like he'd be wearing, I might say it a little bit more confidently. I am inevitable. Kind of like that, maybe. But I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy. 5 years ago, I aspired to be that voice actor, but I'm not that guy anymore. I just want to be me. I want to play golf. That's all I want to do. I don't want to do anything else. I've got right outside this door, I've got a great, amazing collection of guitars. It's only a very few of them. It's only 4 or 5, but they're instruments that I've wanted, and I got them because I could afford to for once in my life. And some of them are instruments you can go, yeah, I can understand why you want that one. And then there's a couple that's like, what the hell are you buying an instrument like that for? Because they make me happy, and that's all that matters. And I'm figuring that out too. It's okay to, do something to make you happy. And if that's a guitar that your wife is going to get mad about, ask her first and then wear her down and then get her permission eventually and then get it. Don't make the 35-year-old mistake of buying it and not telling her. You know what I'm
sure.
saying? So, I love what I do, man, and I love sitting in here, but I'm not going to be the Thanos guy. They're going to have to come up with a character that just sounds like me talking.
Now, is there any special preparation that you like to do before you lay down a track?
Go pee. Always helps. Make sure I don't have to do any other bodily functions. I hate recording after I've eaten, so I always wait about 3 hours. And that's a pain in the ass for some of my clients, but they understand why. It does a couple of things. If you listen to my voice this evening, I haven't eaten since, I guess, probably 1 o'clock this afternoon. So there's not a lot of mouth artifact. There's not a lot of pops and clicks and bullshit going on. If I had, if I had just got through eating a burger an hour ago, where there'd be all kinds of pops going on. And you can't do that, right? I don't know. I'm listening to myself right now going, clean audio, good service, be good to your clients, Steve. That's what I'm telling myself in my head.
Now,
okay? That's what I'm telling myself.
Now, I know when somebody asked me to do VO, one of my first things to do was I didn't bother to record anything until I woke up first thing in the morning.
Yeah, I can't do that. You know why? My voice is so deep you can't hear it.
That's the specific reason why I did it, because I wanted my voice to be lower.
And I get that, and I used to do that, but I've kind of worked my voice now to the point where I don't have to do that anymore. I don't have to wait till I wake up to. And I can voice stuff in the morning, and it's real rich, and it sounds good. But one of the things you work toward is the ability to have that longevity all day long.
Well, and can we talk about that just a little bit? Because a lot of people are like, I don't play any instrument, but I'm a decent singer. And I found that a lot of people who have that I don't know if this is a word, but I'm going to say it, vocality. That that it's like tuning an instrument.
It is. It takes time sometimes. Singing is that way because I can't sing really well at all. I can hold pitch, but I'm also cursed with perfect pitch. So if it's off, it annoys me badly. And like I said, I'm OCD, ADD, so you can imagine how painful that can be. It's one of those triggering sort of things. But for me, the preparation part of it is just kind of staying out of my own way. I drink water during the day, not Coke. It's little shit like that, You just kind of have to be smart about it. It's a tool. You keep it in a drawer and you keep it lubricated. You don't let it rust. And when it's out and you got it, you use it like it was meant to be used. You don't abuse it. You clean it up and you put it back. And I have to look at my life that way because I don't have frivolous phone conversations during the day. Why? It takes energy away from my voice. It's energy that somebody else is paying for. Well, I got to keep that to myself. Sorry, guys. That's why I rarely answer the phone prior to 5 p.m. every day, just because I don't want to take anything out of my clients' ears, so to speak.
Well, and I do have to ask this because I'm curious. Do you remember your first gig?
The first commercial I ever cut at all was for, let's see, I'm trying to remember the name of them. They don't exist anymore, so it's a little difficult for me to, but I think they were called State Line Equipment in Texarkana, and it was a tractor dealer, and the ad that I had was for a composter that was a hitch attachment for a tractor, and they were selling it at State Line Equipment. That's the first one I did, and I couldn't tell you what the content of it was. I just happened to remember who the advertiser was. But the first paid one I ever did was for Joe Mallard, the auto dealer in Ruston, Louisiana. I did it at JY Recording in Monroe, Louisiana. And that's the first paid one I ever did. Got $50 for it.
Yeah.
You know what the biggest job I ever got for the least amount of work?
Okay, that's amazing because my free Reeboks was $50.
Well, I got $3,500 for saying 12 words. That's the best. Well, no, I take it back. I paid $5,000 for saying 3.
Holy God! What were those 3? I'm sorry. Yep.
Who I did that one for. I'm sorry. That one actually was for Cadillac. And it was a Super Bowl ad about 11 years ago. So
now that's big time when you get to do a Super Bowl ad.
Well, it wasn't intended to be a Super Bowl ad. It's the same tag I had done for another ad. They just used it on a Super Bowl ad. I only got paid my rate for it, which, it paid good, but it didn't pay the rate it would have paid if I'd made it just authentically for the Super Bowl. It would have paid a hell of a lot more than it paid. But would have paid more than $5,000. I know that much. Those ads bring so dang much money.
Oh yeah, what is it? $2 million for a 30-second spot?
Yeah, and then the cost of production. So these people are investing $10 million stop, as a stop point on most of those spots. They're ridiculously expensive.
So what are you most proud of as far as your professional career goes?
I don't. It's kind of weird. My wife would tell you I'm humble about everything I do, and I am. That's an accurate description. Actually, I'm embarrassed to do things like this, to talk about what I do, even though you can obviously tell I like myself enough.
Well, but there's nothing wrong with pride in doing a job well done.
No. I'm not saying, and I don't have any issue with pride, and I certainly don't have any issue with my own pride. My whole thing about it is, when it comes to my career, I'm not at a point where I can look at any point of it and say I'm particularly proud of it. What I can say, because I don't quantify my life that way. All right, my life is not quantified in that. It doesn't matter. Prideful is an outward expression to somebody else. All right, I don't do that.
Understood.
I'm not built that way. If I'm prideful in any capacity, it is that I am content in the product I have delivered.
It does.
Does that make sense? All right, so that is. I'm content with my ability and capacity right now. Okay? I'm so good with that. I still aspire to do more. Don't get me wrong. And of course, I poo-pooed the idea of doing other stuff. Look, I'll do whatever comes toward me. If whatever comes toward me fits me and I fit it, I'm going to get that job. And I'm going to get it every time. And the reason I'm going to get it is because it's mine. I deserve to have that. And so does everybody else. But in my particular case, the only person I care about is me and my family. So I'm driven to make sure my kids eat and they have a roof over their heads. That's the only thing I'm driven by. And I'm not driven by anything else. So, and the desire to play more golf. That's it. All right. And I'm not lying. I mean, people think, but I'm 48. A shadow's been on my career for a long time now. I mean, I'm not a young man in this business. And when I really stop and quantify that statement, I come up with that I now have been in this business. This year will be 34 years. I was in my trade longer than my dad was in his last trade, and that's saying something. So at this point, what am I? Well, I'm a voice guy, but I'm also a master broadcaster because, I mean, I've done the radio, I've done the television, I've done the satellite. I've accomplished all that. I don't talk about those things in a private way. That's just what I've done. That's just there. It's just part of my experience, and it's part of my story. I don't tell my story very often, and it's not because I'm embarrassed necessarily to do that. It's just like, why the fuck you care what I think or what I did? I can inspire my kids, and guess what? That's the only responsibility I got. The rest is be good to everybody else. And if somebody asks my advice, my opinion about something, be honest, but be fair. And that's the only thing I hope to live out right, is that moving forward out of this business, which I plan to retire from radio itself within the next 18 months, if I'm able to pull that off and just go home and work for myself and be with my wife, she's got a business venture she's starting later this year, then I'm going to go home and do that and just disappear. I would prefer to do that and voice what I want when I can and make whatever living I've got, to make my requirements. That's all I'm asking for. I don't want to be a movie star, big $14 million a year guy. There aren't those. There are a couple of guys in the world of voiceover that make a couple $1,000,000 a year, but there aren't many. And the jobs, they're numerous, but there's always somebody for them. So the competition's always out there. I'm getting too old to care about anybody else when it comes to competition. And if you want me for your job, I'll be glad to read for you. I'll be glad to read for you. Hire me, great. That's what I would certainly hope for. But understand my priorities are, I got to work. So I'm going to give you a good audition. And then after you do that, the customer service is going to be, sometimes you have to remind people of stuff they already know. And that's kind of where I'm at when it comes to growing my life and career at this point. I don't want to grow it anymore. In fact, I would prefer to shrink it. My kids are about to be going college age, and they're going to go off and do their own things because they're all brilliant, and thank goodness they don't want to stay at home, It's time for me and Susan to start thinking a little bit smaller. But before I get there to that point, we've got some other stuff we want to do, and that involves growing my career in a more active way. And that's going to Los Angeles for 6 months, and that's going to New York for 6 months, and that's going to Toronto or Chicago for 6 months. And that's after I've gotten done with radio and the kids are off doing what they're going to go do. We have a plan. It's not over, but that's a very personal plan. And until I actually start off on that path, I can't really talk about it because this path hasn't ended yet. I can't give that any energy because, man, it's not that I can't keep up with this. I'm keeping up with this great. In fact, it's just cooking along like the best kitchen ever right now. I could not be happier.
Well, there's no destination, but you have a direction.
Yeah, and there's no ultimate destination. It's all about the drive anyway. I mean, I'm one of those people. If you really want to calm my soul, put me in a car, and I'll drive 1,000 miles before I turn around. Well, I'm one of those kind of people. I'm just one of those, and my life has not always been that way. I've had to spend a lot of time righting a bunch of wrongs in my life. I've had to spend money I didn't have. I've had to, and these are all done things, and everybody has this. Life just freaking happens, people, and it happens in stacks and bundles and towers, and it's difficult and it's painful. It's not always nice, and for some people it's never nice, and for some people it's never bad. But that's all relative. And when you realize it's all relative, you can be fairer to people, you can be nicer to people, you can maintain your own existence without the influence of others, and you can just concentrate on your family. Our whole job as parents, in my belief, is to get the hell out of our kids' way. It's to nurture them and love them and give them security, but also to educate them and prepare them and then move out of their way. Because if you don't, what have you done? You've wasted your time. That's all you've done, in my opinion.
I can't disagree. And from the chat, it's the next question is, what has been your favorite voice or promo to do?
Okay. I'll give you 2 examples. I did a promo. If you go to my agent's No. Go to www.stevetvo.com. I have not completed this site. It is being messed with, but there is a SoundCloud.
Yeah, I didn't. I apologize. I didn't pimp it because there wasn't anything there yet to listen to. It exists, but
yeah, exactly. It's there, and it's there to listen to now. It's ugly, and I'm working on it. I just haven't had time, and it really doesn't matter enough to me at the moment. I've got other things going on, but the very first thing on the playlist was a promo done for iHeartMedia's national programming platforms that was put together by John Manuel at iHeartMedia, and it's for the awards that they just did recently, earlier this year in February or March or whenever it was. And the way I voiced that one in particular, it was a good sharp day, and the way it's produced, it just sounds fantastic. But I got to tell you, I read, I mentioned the voice of the newscaster in the adaptation of War of the Worlds that we did. I've done a character called The Curious Case, the story is called The Curious Case of Lolo Marino. That's one of those characters that, to me, is timeless. He was one of those cop guys, a real gravelly sort of guy right there. Those are great, but the best line I ever read is, we pause 60 seconds for a commercial, just so you know. I'm not a commercial. I think it's the coolest line I've ever read. That's it. I can't think of one, because man, I've between what I produce here locally, 5 stations, we do a lot of promos, and all the promos I read for other stations, and I got several. I kind of lose track, if you want to know the truth about it.
Well, and I can see that because you do so much that it will actually cause the memory to get fuzzy.
It does, and I mean, I imbibe in the legal use of marijuana, because it's legal here now. If it were illegal, I'd be involved in the illegal use of marijuana. Just so you know, I'm one of those kind of guys. I've smoked the herb since I was much younger, and I have stayed with it, and it makes me feel much better and able to cope with my day. But that's, didn't you ask me earlier about... Bless you! Don't get hurt when you do that.
Excuse me.
There.
I'm sorry.
Oh, wow. Sneezage. Too bad we can't edit that. I'm getting a little bit tired, man. I actually could use a drink at this point, but...
I was hoping we could do this at the homestead so you could.
No, look, I like my little booth so much, and it's a good sounding little booth. I like being in here. I love my office. It's like I said, my office is not work for me. I got guitars around here, and I got, it's not that I mess around or, F off all day, but I've got to have a certain level of my comforts around me just because it keeps me sane, I'm one of those kind of creative people.
And I wish, it's so funny because I wish I could remember it. But I love the delivery that you made on the line. I wrote it and I can't remember it. He was built like a redwood with a crew cut, dead.
Oh yeah. Oh God, man, I wish I still had this script because I'd pull it out and read it. There's it's blah 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 blah, dead. It's just dead out of nowhere, and it's like dead. It's like the way Stacy Keach would say it though if he was doing a Mike Hammer thing. It was a cold night in the city. This guy was laying out there. He'd had a bad night. Rolled in late, dead. It just has anything to do it that way. Well,
you can tell I'm a big Mickey Spillane fan.
Oh God, yeah. You have to be. I mean, if you're gonna do any kind of crime writing, you kind of have to be. You got to go that way. You do.
But now, one of the things that we bring up quite a bit, and this crosses over with everybody that I talk to because my general mantra is interviewing interesting people who do interesting things. I have an acronym that's called it's flexing your pec. Meaning you have to have passion for what you do. You have to make the effort to do it, and you have to be committed to see it all the way through, pass or fail.
Yep. No matter what obstacles you got, you have to stick your chest out sometimes.
If you wouldn't mind, could you expound on that personally?
Okay. Real easy for me. The agency that represents me for the majority of my voiceover interest is Atlas Talent Agency. They're based in New York City. Lisa Rich is my primary agent, and she founded this agency.
And they're linked down in the descriptor.
Oh, is that? Yeah. And Lisa, if Lisa is, what she does for me is easy to describe, but it's not easy to describe. It's difficult to put into words because she has a certain reservoir of sauce that she has that nobody else has. John Wasser, who is the vice president of Atlas and was instrumental in getting me in front of the people at CourtTV. I work with great agents. They're very good at what they do. And they assure to me a certain level of security. I got somebody on my side, and that's incredible to me. They represent other great people too. Many people that I know, and we all love ourselves. We're not in competition with each other. We all want to do well and make money, and that's a lot of fun. But moving this thing forward, being tied with an agency and having that stability. Great for me, great for my wife. She loves that, appreciates that. As you can imagine, it's terrifying for her to think about, I've been in radio, it's got this great job and all this, and my radio job pays great, but I don't want to do this anymore all the time. And so she's somewhat trepidatious about it, but that's understandable. And the way we work that out is like, well, you kind of got to go do it. So that's kind of where it leaves me. Looking at this, going, how do I dig into this with some something I can? You mentioned commitment earlier, and that is such an important role in getting better and getting good jobs and staying on track. And I feel like there is a track that you have to stay on when it comes to this business. You have to be true to yourself, but you have to not piss somebody off. You have to not say something bad about something that some people might find sensitive. And let me tell you something. Working in the entertainment world specifically has made me, it has turned me into an empath. And when you're that sensitive all day long to what people are broadcasting, and you begin to figure out everybody's got an opinion, everybody wants to be heard, it really quiets down my office. I don't talk as much when I talk to other people. I get to listen. And there are so many voices in what we do that come from so many different backgrounds that I think the strong case for me doing this has been the happiness of being able to meet the type of people I've met. It's made me a rich person in not a monetary sense, although monetarily it's doing far better than I ever thought it would. But the barometer for me is how much have I learned, how much more exposure to something. See, this goes back to that small town mentality. I just wanted to ask the right questions and learn more. And now I don't have to do that because I'm surrounded by folks coming in my ears or email or whatever that have their background and mine have nothing to do with one another. They don't believe in what I believe in. And you can't go through your day fighting everybody. And this is not 48-year-old advice. This is advice that should be given to you and you should adhere to the day you're born. You don't spend your life fighting people. And you can avoid doing that by, A, staying out of their business, B, keeping people out of yours. It's easy. And when opinions are left out of it and feelings are left out of it and you just cut it down to the raw, bare, what the freak it is, then you can stop and think about and analyze it. And that's at 48. I've got enough idle time in my day right now. That's kind of where my brain ends up going. I start trying to perfect, I'm working on me right now because I can. I'm not having to worry about the job and stability aspect of it and then providing for my kids. I'm doing everything they need me to do. They need to go somewhere, they go. They need help with homework, they get it. They need advice on this and ask for it, they get it. They get everything they need every time they want it. Doesn't matter what time of day it is. Doesn't matter if I have to go get them. It doesn't matter who their friends are, and I think I'm saying all that to lead up to this because it's very important to me. It's not a utopian view. I just hate that everybody's so mad right now. And this is symptomatic of the last 2, 4, 8 years. You can call it whatever you want. You can blame it on whatever you want to. But we're at a point societally where as a voice person, I'm having to shut down that empathy that for years I worked so hard to be sensitive to everybody else because, I'm working not with one guy. I'm working with other people with opinions and days of their own and stresses and all this. And that's hard to do. And that's scary to do, especially if you're a sensitive person or you're self-centered enough to feel like your opinion is more important than everybody else's. If you're one of those people that needs the gratification of your opinion being stroked all the time, this is an incredibly hard business to be in. And you will spend your time getting your feelings hurt because people will tell you what they think and they don't give a damn how it will affect you. You got to have some teeth. And my kids, I'm beginning to get them to see that life ain't about fairness. Relationships and interpersonal stuff is about fairness. Life ain't fair. Life don't care. Life is just a downhill run. And if you think it's anything else, it's not anything else. It's just that. All you're trying to do is get to your last day and get buried. And if you're trying to do anything else or deviate from that course, you're fighting an uphill battle and probably putting more stuff on you as you should. I'm not being a fatalist either. I'm being a realist. I don't go through my days worrying about how the next year is going to be. I can't. I can only focus on right now. Why? Because people are paying me to read these words right now in this space-time continuum, not the one that doesn't exist a year from now. It changes your perspective about how you have to live. You have to live in the moment. You have to live in reality, and you have to put your feelings and your ears aside sometimes and just let people be who they are. If what they say pisses you off, so what? Shut your ears and it doesn't matter. You should never give people, and this is another voiceover. This is where voiceover people fail. Don't let your other people have sway over you. Their opinions about what they think about your voice. If you're making money, honey, keep doing it. It doesn't make a damn what nobody else thinks about it. And some of the most unique, terrible voices on the planet make more money than I do, and I make decent money. And I'm not a bad sounding guy, but there's some people out there that sound horrible that make more money than I do. Why? They sacrifice more themselves than I do, and I'm not satisfied with sacrificing myself anymore. I'm too old to do that. I've paid those dues. And you get to that point. That's what they don't tell you. Doc, I bet you they didn't tell you when you're in your 20s. That's the point you get to. But that's the point you get to. And they don't tell you that. And when you finally arrive at a level of maturity where in deep honesty you can look at yourself, not be upset at yourself, and be confident that, wow, that's a mature thing. It is a goal to be mature. It is a goal to be better. And I think I wake up that way. And I try to bring that to my clients, even though they tell you I'm full of shit most of the time. But that's okay. I try to make them happy too, and I work with great people. It's the most enriching thing I do.
Well, no. I mean, in full disclosure, when somebody audio adapts one of the stories that I do, and I've got about 24 out there now, by 3 or 4 different sources. And I look at the comments, and like, I would say about 10% of them are like, this sucks, this is horrible. The first thing I think of is, well, 90% of them like it. I don't focus. Right. I don't gravitate towards the negative.
No, I mean, and you can't. And I'm not. Look, I'm going to be honest. 48 years has taught me that your feelings are irrelevant. It does not matter what you think. And once you get okay with that, once you feel like that, once you get over the urge of having to have every fucking syllable you say heard by every freaking pair of ears on the planet, that's what I hate right now. There's so much stuff that is going on and people hurting that are trying to give voice to that their voice is being lost because of the previous people and the way they communicate at it aren't as good at it or as fair about it or as honest about it. And it does, you can pick the movement. I mean, it applies to every movement. And now a lot of the things that had so much meaning to people even a year ago don't even mean anything to them anymore. So this is a society that, as an older guy kind of sitting here and being the kind of self-centered emotional person that I am in the first place, I don't like being around people. So I'll stay in my little booth. I'll take orders from people. I'll read this, that way that they want it done. Y'all pay me on time. I'll read it again for you next month. And if I can just be of service to people and spread my own little bit of, happiness and goodness to people, I'm happy doing that. Reading parts is just what I do. And if somebody doesn't like it,
well, and a lot of people find themselves trying to find validation, whether through religion or politics or whatever. And
whatever, right?
It's all about you being able to find value within yourself. Because if you find value within yourself, that is the most important gift that you can share with the generation that comes after you. If you're the progenitor, you have to be able to properly explain what life is about. And you know what? Kids, especially in their teens, I've helped to raise 4 kids. I've been successful 75% of the time. And it's the whole thing where I want them to get it that technically they are the center of their own universe. And it's what they do. It's the cosmic runoff of what they do that affects everybody. And now you don't have to basically infect everyone globally, but if you're being a good person, if you're doing the best that you can do, that rubs off on everyone around you.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, I think that maybe you said far better than I could about, that's actually what I'm trying to do, and as I said, I find society difficult right now, but I think globally we have that problem. And I'm a global thinker. I'm not a globalist, but I'm a global thinker because what we do here affects people there too, and it doesn't matter where there is. And whether it doesn't matter the issue. And let me tell you, I'm so sick of politics. I don't care who you throw up there. I don't want anybody else to ever have to be the president of this country. I would rather it be ran and not by this Congress and this group of lawmakers that's been up there for 60 and 70 and 80 years. Go to hell. Okay. What has happened is the idea that was a great constitutional republic is turned into something that is distasteful to most people. And that's a shame. And it didn't have to be that way. And it's not just politicians.
Well, what is it? The last congressional vote, now they're making $172,000 and they don't even do the job 24/7.
I don't care what they get paid. It's another sham. You know what? It's a sham along with the tax situation in the United States. And if you're from the United States and you pay taxes, it's bullshit from top to bottom. People that make a very little bit of money feel like they pay too many taxes. I make a decent amount of money. I still pay too much taxes. If I make a little bit more than what I make now, I'm going to go up into a different bracket, and that's going to be even more taxes. I'm being punished for my success. Kiss my ass. There's no logic to that. Flat tax. Period. I'm sorry, that's as political as I'll get, and I'm not going to.
Well, no. I mean, that's completely fair because of the system. They can bilk you.
No, of course, that's what happens.
No, of course, that's what happens. And you take a small business owner like myself, and before I became a small business owner with my own incorporation, I think personally, I was paying 28% is how much was coming out of for federal. It was a little bit more than 25, slightly less than 30. Now it's at about 41%, and this is 2 presidents later. And it doesn't matter who's in office, I'm telling you.
No.
When it comes down to that. Your party politics are all smoke and mirrors. You need to. Then again, that's a
No.
But,
And that's fine. If it veers into that, then that's completely okay, because
fundamentally, though, the parties get in the way of progress. The party ideology does. It's just the same way I can cite you a number of different ways that, as Christopher Hitchens was so renowned for saying that, religion poisons everything. I can take that phrase and say the same thing applies to politics. Politics poisons everything, and it's not worth it. It's just, it's such a horrible career, and you have to do so much. And everybody's, you're going to serve. No, you're not. You're going to make deals with the devil. That's what politics is. That's all it is. And if you don't think it's not just the buddy system, you really need to go to Washington and watch how it works, because that's what they do all damn day. Sitting there, Washington is nothing more than a circle jerk, is what Washington is.
I can't disagree, because of the fact that there are so many people there. I mean, okay, they're getting their salary, but the money that they make off of graft, off of being able to push bills for what they say is their constituents.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It's all in the language. It's the subtleties that are so telling, and you really have to pay attention to that. Hey, check your PM, by the way. Facebook.
Okay. I dropped that out, so bear with me just a second.
It's okay.
Well,
I want to ask you a question. Now, I'm actually very curious about this. You said you were working on perhaps a second little thing of one of the things that we've done before. Why'd you tell me that? Because now it's going to be like, dude, you're going to have to do that now. You need to come up with that now.
I can't. I will be honest. I can't get your voice out of my head when I'm writing this character. And I know wifey continuously. I write every day, but because of the amount of strokes that I had, my memory, easiest analogy that I have. I walk downstairs to make myself a sandwich. I'm looking at the bag of bread. I'm seeing the word bread, and it doesn't process.
Right. Oh gosh, man, that's a stroke. That is a true stroke symptom right there, dude.
But it's just like there are so many things that I'd like to get done before they put me in to the crematorium and make me ashes, because I think there's a worthwhile story left there that and I'll be completely candid with this, that I want to hear you do. It's not about me getting out, because I don't care. I sincerely do not care one way or the other, because it'll be around. Somebody's going to hear it. Somebody's going to get some entertainment out of it. I'm fine with that. But for my own selfishness, I want to get this part 2 done, and I definitely want to hear you do it. I even wrote one for Otis that was kind of like the same character but older. That I want him to do, and I'm not satisfied with it as much as I was with this one, because honestly, the words are just not coming.
Well, I know what you mean, and I mean, I'm a writer too, not in the public sense. I have to do commercials and stuff like that, but I mean, I've written short stories and things like that for my own entertainment. I've shared them with people here and there, and I love writing prose just because for me it's a challenge, and I love being able to make a thought flow with great words, because I love words. I get to read great words, and writing them is just kind of an extension of that. But I have great respect for you having to sit down and condense all this fog into something that is uniform, is true to the character, and has a direction. And that's hard as hell to do, especially in the type of writing that you do. And you do so well at it. I think you're a master. I really don't. I think I think the one we worked on should be a movie. I really do. I think it could be shelved into a movie.
Hearing somebody like yourself saying that is incredibly humbling.
No, I'm serious. I think it is. It's worthy of screenplay because you can see everything. You know how it was put together. It was so well scored, and and that's the thing. The music was so good at it. It was just fitted so well.
Brandon blew me away on that.
Brandon Boone, yeah. And if there was something, if I was actually proud of, I would say it's. That's a good one to be proud of. Right there,
you incredibly exceeded my expectations. I thought you were going to do an awesome job, and you failed because you did greater than whatever the adjective of above awesome is.
Oh gosh, well you're very gracious, and I appreciate that. It's a mutual admiration thing. I do have. That's why I was so interested in the project in the first place, because you're an excellent writer, and when you have material that you can get behind, it makes it easier to get behind the material. Your material is very accessible to me. And it's like I said earlier. The instant I started reading, it was like, yeah, jeez, man, Otis, no, he's not getting this one. And this is mine. And I kind of said, yeah, I want to do that one. I think is what I told our friend. And what a fun thing for me, because that's one of those that one's gotten more comments. Obviously, it's one of the only ones I've done. Only about 6 or 7 lead characters, I think, for that particular group, and that's one of the ones that I had to carry. That was a longer story than I had to carry.
That's about a half hour, yeah.
And that's 31 minutes, I think it is, or 33. It depends on where I've downloaded it from, but oh gosh, it's still one of those ones. I can remember down to the second reading that thing in my booth down in Biloxi. And on my big Telefunken microphone I had, I can recall it second by second almost, and I know how many takes I did on all those, and I know you got probably the most genuine performance out of me that I could have, and I can do better because I'm listening to it. I can listen to that now and hear where I could have done better, which would be great and useful if we move on to version 2 or part 2 rather.
And I'm sorry, I'm distracted by sending it back because and honestly, it's for me personally, writing is a solitary thing, and seeing all these people come together and do such an amazing job. I hear it in my head, but when you did what you did, and Brandon did what he did, and all the other guest stars that we had coming in.
We had a bunch too.
And it's funny because I wrote the guy who runs the website, and he was like, "Well, who do you want to do these parts?" And I listed them, and legitimately every single person that I listed is there.
Even Spike, he did a thing for it too, didn't he? That's what I thought. Which we're talking about a guy that has a much bigger name, but this is a very special thing.
Well, MCP wrote me back after the one I did, the mix with him and Otis. He was just like, anything you ever want me to do.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. I did an interview with him because we presented that in the middle of a podcast. You may remember, and I was the host of that podcast, so I had to do an interview with him. And man, my kids freaked out over that. They're like, "Can't believe you did an interview with Spike." I'm like, "I know."
The only problem I have, and I hate to air this publicly, but the only problem that I really have is the fact that he will dip into Reddit and not give people credit.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm a big believer in accountability on that kind of stuff and giving credit where credit is due. I work with producers that when I sample audio or share it, it's incumbent that I make sure people know who the producer was, because these are the guys. I may have the voice, but I have this raw voice, and it's not the finished product. Obviously, it's just some raw stuff to work with. But these magicians get in there and add sound and magic to it, and probably a little donkey piss and some dragon blood, and no telling what else. They probably have voodoo dolls of me out there they're castrating or something. But there's any number of ways the magic shows up. It always does. And man, these guys are so good at what they do, and it's a joy for me to hear that what I can give them, at least in a small bit of material, they can turn into something that people actually go, man, I got to go to that shit.
Well, and it's funny because when No Sleep Podcast started paying me hardcore for the stuff that I was turning in, I was like, listen, guys, I'm only doing this because, I know you know Jeff Clement.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite people.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite
he
people.
is amazing. I can't get him on because of the fact that every Tuesday he has his kids. And
Yeah, exactly. Jeff's one of those guys. He came from Chilling Tales for Dark Nights a couple years ago, and he and I have had some great conversations. I enjoyed working with him tremendously because he's so talented. He's a great sound designer, but he's a great musician too. And what he does for the No Sleep podcast is a different standard, I think, not than Chilling Tales necessarily, but I think he puts the bar of where at minimum it should always be, and he's one of those guys that I look to for inspiration.
And amazing guy. And I'll say this, if somebody wants to figure out how to dox me, I wrote a story specifically for him because he and I were talking behind the scenes. And he was like, I want a story that's going to be able to challenge me as a producer.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, well, if you want that, I will provide that for you.
I'll write anything in, but
I'll write anything in, buddy.
Because he's amazing. And I wrote a story called October 17th, 1989. And it was a story that specifically was about more of the ambient quality. I mean, you have to have good actors to do it, right? But it was more about the ambient quality. And I'm like, all right, you want a challenge? Here it is. And then years later, legitimately, the guy that we both know wanted to produce this. And I was like, no, this is Jeff's story. And 5 years later, No Sleep was just like, okay, this is awesome. We need to do it.
Yeah, timely.
I'm like, I don't care how long it takes. And I want to dovetail this back in. It's the quality of the people. And if I ever set anything into your hands, I don't have any worry about the production being quality coming out of it.
When it comes to Jeff, that's certainly true, and I've tried to make certain that that's the sort of feeling, at least customer service wise, that my clients have, because I don't want to be the reason they're having a bad day.
Sure.
I know how easy it is for something like that to happen on a daily basis like that. So it's incumbent, and I use that word again because it truly is incumbent, that if you're going to be in a service business that we do, and I mean, Jeff is, in his case, in No Sleep Podcast, he has deadlines to meet because they have a schedule to meet. And as a writer exactly how that works. So, when you're having to satisfy somebody else's clock, and you can do it with grace, and you can do it and maintain your sanity, there's something to be said about that in a very inspiring way, because creative people don't do well under stress. But he's one of those good guys.
And let me just say this without any of the dropping to the knees and servicing. If I've got something that I think that you're perfect for and that I want to do, that's really essentially all the motivation that I need. I mean, I just recently wrote a story about Hitler being in the Wild West. And there,
you see, I could read any of that.
I will send it to you, Wifey, because she's a professional editor. Wifey is currently editing it, and I had part of the storyline about a chupacabra, and she's like, "This is fucking stupid. Get rid of it." But I mean, anything that you would like to be a part of, I personally find it not only as validation, but incredibly flattering, because you already know this, and I'm sure this thought has run through your mind, that you are a talent, that it doesn't make a difference when you get those 10% of detractors. It doesn't matter, because of the fact that you're getting 90% of the people that are like, "Oh my God, wow."
And just to assert myself on this, you really want to know how I feel about it? I don't care what anybody thinks. Not when it comes to that, because the only person that can have any say on the work I do is the client paying the check. And that's the only person I care about. If they're happy with it, I'm okay with it. But see, I save myself the trouble of not talking about things that I don't like talking about, like politics and religion and all that kind of garbage. So I leave that out, and I don't have a very complicated work life when it comes right to it. It just is as simple as it can be. I don't have any of those traps that some people fall into that cause derision. I'm just not going to do that, man. I like a simple life.
And personally, monetarily, there's usually never any money in creativity until you're dead.
Well, that's very true.
Well, that's very true. And I mean, ask any, artist who's died. John Lennon, for instance. He's a great example of that. They had great success during his lifetime. But boy, that Beatles catalog sure got rich after Michael Jackson.
Oh, sure.
I'm just saying. I mean, there's all number of things that could be dramatically different from some of the people that, have inspired us over time. And it's just, it is a pure act of chance that some of the amazing things that have happened in audio and creativity and art have happened and actually got through the filter somehow, and we've been able to see some of the things we have seen. But I think when people I'm real guarded about this, because if I shut myself off to things like politics and religion and I won't voice those things, that's limiting me in some way or another in the larger scale of things. It's convenient for now, but it may prevent me from doing something great later. I want to also say this about that. I don't really care about that either, because I know at some point or another, something that I love to do is always going to come back up, and I'll dive back off into that, give it my energy, make my wife happy, and pet my dog. So there.
And honestly, the magic is there, and long after we're gone, retiring the boots from life, people are going to find that. They're going to find the things that you've done, found them motivating, found them inspiring, and have basically keyed in on being able to be the best that they can be. And I think that's the true magic of creativity.
Yeah, that's very well stated. And I cannot disagree, to borrow your most excellent phrase. Creative types fuel the planet. I mean, money doesn't make the world go round. Money just helps along the way. It's not your enemy. The people preventing you from doing what you want to do are your enemy. People that don't believe in what you believe in are not necessarily your enemy. But people that keep you from being who you are the enemy. You've got something to do. We all have a task when it comes to that sort of thing right there. I'm a very tolerant person. No, I'm not. tolerance is not part of my vocabulary. I don't have to be tolerant. I'm accepting. Is a different kind of thing. I understand the fact that the dynamic of everything that we do is affected by everybody around us. This whole planet is that way. We are an entire body and organism, and we don't even realize it. Some people can't talk about human beings in that way, but we affect one another. And sensitive people like you, Doc, that write sensitively and can write in such a way that can tap people in those dark corridors. That's what makes your writing so great for the horror genre, is because you know how to spring it on somebody from the just least expected place. There's something to be said for being able to look inside somebody else and write something that can grab that and pull it out and make it tangible to somebody. You're a gifted man. And I'm saying that not for any other reason of the fact that, well, you were nice enough to write a script that I enjoyed tremendously. I can't wait till we do part 2. And I don't know why you let me take up so much of your podcast time.
Because you're worth it.
Well, you're a true friend, and I mean that most sincerely. And I've told you the reasons why. So, I appreciate you sharing me with your audience. This has been such a great experience for me. Because you and I haven't talked in a while.
Yeah, because of the cooling off process with that other guy, it kind of spaced out. But now other people are picking up my shit, and but I tell you what, let me go ahead and wrap this up, because of course you've shared a great amount of time with us, and I certainly appreciate it. I will always make the offer, if you've got anything that you would like to shill or promote, please make sure and keep me in the loop so I can pass it on, because you are definitely a talent that honestly cannot be selfishly hoarded. It needs to be promoted and taken care of.
Well, that's very sweet of you. And man, I tell you, I love what I do. I've said that again and again, and I love the reasons I do it. I love for whom I do it. And it's incredibly enriching in every capacity, whether it from the monetary side of it to the peace of mind side of it. And I cannot think of anything that I could possibly do at this point that would be better. I'd love to be a great guitar player, but I've come to grips with the fact a long time ago I'll never be a great guitar player. I'll be an adequate guitar player. Bass playing, on the other hand, I'm a really damn good bass player, but I don't take that out of my office too much. You can come visit, I'll show off for you, but I'm 48. I don't need to be in a garage band. I did that when I was 19 and 20. So, your priorities change. I've mellowed, actually. I think I'm not as harsh around the edges, and I keep a smile on a lot more than I did, because I'm enriched by people like you. You give me great material to read and write and enjoy, and that's part of the great attraction of keeping doing what I'm doing, man. It's all part of the great symbiosis.
And I will definitely second that motion, because it's not difficult to write when you know you have such talent available to you.
Yeah, it makes it a joy to it's a real corroborative effort, and effort when it comes down to that. And I love just this is the kind of partnership it's easy to be a part of, because it's going to be great when it stops.
I certainly hope I can keep it up and not disappoint.
You're going to be great, my friend. And thanks for having me on. I appreciate it greatly, and sharing me with your folks. I don't get to. Most of the time on Tuesday nights at 7, or in our case 7:26, or whenever we were actually able to start, whatever it ended up being. I'm in the same room as my wife. She's watching television, and I'm trying my best to ignore it. So this is great.
And I hope this is something 20 years from now your kids are going to basically pop up on the YouTube or whatever generates from it, and enjoy
right.
the fact that their dad is a good man.
Dad tries, and that's what's in my heart. It doesn't always come out that way, but that's.
And so let me go ahead and do the wrap up on this. And I would like to thank my guest this evening. Of course, his links are located down in the descriptor. Not only the official website, but of course his talent reel, the Twitter, his Facebook, and of course Instagram. If you like what we do here, or if you like what we do on the Insomnia Ramble stream, feel free to check me out on the Twitter. I do have a Streamlabs as well. There's a Patreon there. And, of course, if you're looking for any relevant merchandise, feel free to check out the TeePublic store that has not only Doctor On Call, but my favorite thing, the Insomnia Ramble stream, because of the magical condensed. But the second most important thing, of course, is the prescription for additional entertainment. These are smaller YouTubers just like myself who are doing great things to entertain you. Give them a time. Give them something to give them a listen and something to appreciate, because it's all about being entertained, being enlightened, and maybe perhaps even spreading your perspective. So for my guest, I have to say this, next week our guest is going to be the charity stream master himself, Disky Fringo. And I hope everybody will tune in for that, because I think we're going to go in directions that you might not expect. Because we're not a drama stream, but there's a lot of drama surrounding the things that he and I have done. Please feel free and drop in and enjoy that stream. But for myself, and of course, big thanks to my guest, Steve Taylor. Thank you very much for tuning in this evening. And as always, we appreciate your time. And the doctor's office is now closed.